I'm Steve Lennox. Green Bay Packers this past weekend meeting with representatives for Aaron Rodgers. Now Rodgers could be in camp in the coming days. Sources telling ESPN's Adam Schefter the two sides hoping to finalize an agreement where the team is offering concessions to Rodgers that includes adjusting his contract with no loss of income to give the Packers more cap room right now. Mike Golick Jr. today on Shanae and Golick Jr. here on ESPN Radio.
This whole situation was predicated on how much Aaron Rodgers wanted to make the Packers uncomfortable. And at this point, grading the offseason in totality, it seems like that was only mildly. Now, if it gets this accomplished and clears a path going forward for him to leave after next year, then certainly you can say that there's some victory in that. But as we got closer and closer, I don't think as we saw off-season pictures of him working out, training, staying in shape, that we expected he was going to waste one of the prime years in the twilight of his career.
Mike Golick Jr. today on ESPN Radio. Packers open up camp tomorrow. Bengals owner Mike Brown saying today quarterback Joe Burrow won't be rushing an action team, will likely hold him out of preseason games. Burrow fully cleared for football activities, had left knee surgery back in December. Washington football team announcing it signed Jonathan Allen to a 4-year extension worth $72 million. Saints placing receiver Michael Thomas on the PUP list today. Thomas expected to miss the start of the regular season. Blue Jays and Red Sox at Fenway tonight, second inning on ESPN TV. Red Sox up 1-0, have the bases loaded with nobody out. Braves blank the Mets 2-0 in game one of their doubleheader at Citi Field. Kyle Muller, two relievers combining on the shutout.
Hey, it's Greeny and Water Week, the very latest on Aaron Rodgers, the very latest on the baseball trade deadline, and leading up to the NBA draft. Don't miss a minute, Tuesday, with me, Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
Isn't this a sports show?
I left my house, and one of my housemates said, man, you got to ask those people at 810 to stop making you wear all these stupid clothes to work. That's unfair. That's bullying. Because I think I was wearing my lobster shorts.
Almost entirely.
Skies out, thighs out. Please be cloudy tomorrow. Please be cloudy tomorrow.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
If I ever wear like a polo and khakis, just kill me in that moment.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
Put that on my tombstone. He died with a great shirt, a great watch, and a great haircut.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810.
Happy Monday, happy training camp, happy Almost Entirely Sports. The whole gang is here. I'm Joshua Brisco, Rudy Salazar in studio, Beards McFly on the other side of the glass. 3 hours of absolute ecstasy that you get to share with us here this evening. I don't know what else you could possibly ask for other than that. We'll do our best to provide it for you here. We are in a finally sort of a exhaling place in terms of football being here. It's not all incredibly informative. Like today was really just rookies out there in St. Joe. Patrick Mahomes and Chad Henne got a day off, and you got to see some Shane Bouchelet, and that's, that was today in St. Joe. I was up there yesterday, got a little more information than that. We've got the press conferences, and then we get veterans actually practicing tomorrow. So it's starting to feel a lot like football, which is a pretty wonderful place to be, mercifully at this point here, especially at this tail end of July. It certainly doesn't feel like it's here earlier than it needed to be. It just feels like football got here right at about the right time. And I almost had lost all hope of talking about baseball any longer. We got those late NBA finals, which, could have ended better, but the playoffs are generally good. But mercifully, I feel like we can say officially as a show, football has arrived.
Shane, for some reason I was thinking his last name's pronounced Bouchel, but I also, I'm not 100% sold on anything.
I'm pretty sure I heard somebody call him Bouchelet yesterday.
But Texas to SMU.
It's just I just realized. It took me a second to realize you're just doing the thing that you do, which is knowing every single college player
one
ever.
of the quarterbacks who had Texas back as a freshman.
Wow.
And then he ended up at SMU, and now with the Chiefs.
Also, Anthony Gordon was getting work today. There's
Washington
your
State.
two. What, really?
Yep.
It's on my little card here. I mean, I can check that is in fact correct. I just didn't know. I don't know why you knew that.
Washington State.
But anyway,
Played under Mike Leach.
I was up. Oh, interesting. Okay, that makes me. You know what? He was not only catching he was catching passes on Sunday, and I think he actually took a couple of handoffs because the Chiefs had one rookie running back for the first couple of days.
I would say the thing that I remember about him is I'm pretty sure he was kind of like the athlete playing quarterback, right? Like he could run. So
he was doing it all in camp too.
That makes sense.
But it was fun to be up there yesterday and get to see a whole bunch of people in person that I hadn't seen in person in
probably a long time,
year and a half or something like that. So really, like a legitimate, a lot of fun to get to be up there. I will admit publicly, I'm still not fully used to the drive, just because for my entire driving life, once I hit about a 30-minute mark, I start getting sleepy, and I start getting kind of restless. I could have a good on the way up, I listened to a podcast I hadn't listened to. Yeah. On the way back down, I listened to an album that had just come out that I was very excited to listen to. And still, about 30, 35 minutes into the hour and 10-ish minute drive, you start rationalizing, like, maybe if I just if I close my eyes for one full second, maybe I'll be rejuvenated as if I've taken a full nap.
See, I
It's bad.
Very good, I guess you could say, at driving while being sleepy because I just am always sleepy. So
that's incredibly
right.
Fair.
Like I've just learned to I've learned how to cope with this. You learn to cope with the sleepiness by always being sleepy.
I definitely
always 24/7 a sleepy boy.
I definitely had a better time on the way back down than on the way up. Although practice is a little later this year, every practice except for the last one starts at 9:15, so that gave us a little extra time. Actually, a couple quick little training camp things. Then I want to get into a much bigger, much heavier story, and then we'll circle back around again. Also, a double dose of Chiefs guests tonight. We'll talk to Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest, who's been up there in St. Joe for practice, and got to talk to him and hang out with him a little bit yesterday. We'll talk to him tonight at 8. I need to make sure that he's not planning on coming in studio. I just realized that was never clarified. And if he does, that would also be excellent, but I just don't think that's the plan. And then Craig Stout of KCSN, Kansas City. Well, it's just KC Sports Network. Yeah. I want to talk to him about sort of the second half of his Chris Jones film review that we discussed with him as he had done part 1, essentially, last time he was on the show. And then we'll talk about that. Then bring back Alex Okafor. There were a couple little things from Josh Kando yesterday where his answers were short and sweet, but a couple things I tried to dig in on a little bit to see if he had any insights what his first little stretch as an NFL defensive end looked like, and I'm going to try to pivot that into a couple of questions for Craig tonight as well. But we'll talk to Matt at 8, Craig at 9, and get into a whole bunch of training camp stuff and some observations from when I was up there yesterday. And I should let you know that all of our coverage of Chiefs training camp is brought to you by D. Pasquale Moore Injury Attorneys, Mike D. Pasquale, and the law offices of D. Pasquale Moore. If you or a loved one has been hurt in a car wreck, remember, Mike's got this. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements. Also brought to you by Bud Light, Chiefs training camp coverage here on Sports Radio 810, presented by Bud Light, the official beer of your Kansas City Chiefs, and our friends at CBD American Shaman. Over 40 local locations. By the end of the week, I'll get really good at saying that. Come in for a free sample today. CBD American Shaman. Life is better with the feather. A couple things from being up there on Sunday. One is that it was just rookies and quarterbacks, and so you got really familiar with watching a number 40 trotting into the end zone because Derrick Gore was getting all of the work in terms of being the only rookie running back that was out there. But we got some interesting things from guys like Juan Thornhill. He was out there early. Taco Charlton was out there early. Armani Watts was out there early. Those are guys that are working back from injuries that are able to report a couple days earlier with the rookies. And In fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and dive in there because I think the most interesting thing from the weekend for me was some stuff with Juan Thornhill, and then I'll give you the hint as to where we're going to go in a little while. Lots of stuff on Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson over these last couple of days. Very different reasons for being the two most discussed quarterbacks in terms of where they're going to spend their 2021 and beyond. I found the way both of those have been talked about really interesting. Watson even more so. Some weird stuff today that we'll get to in a little bit. But Beards, if you've got the new Google Doc locked and loaded, I would love to let people hear a little bit from Juan Thornhill. There are two things that I think we can take away from what you're going to hear from Thornhill as he spoke to us yesterday. And also a couple of things that I think you can look back on and will make a lot of sense in retrospect. One thing to remember, he tore his ACL in Week 17 of the 2019 season. Now, an ACL, we've all pretty much grown to accept that it's about a year-long recovery. It's gotten shorter and shorter as medicine has gotten better and better. But generally speaking, it's about a year before you see a guy like fully back, it feels like. But last year was weird for Juan Thornhill because he was back on the field in Week 1. That's a very, again, to be terribly obvious, a very rare thing to have the turnaround from Week 17, tearing your ACL, to being back on the field in Week 1 and playing a considerable amount over the first chunk of the season. I'll get you the exact snap counts here in a second because I did that. We talked about this a lot last year because it jumped off the screen. Like it was relatively easy to see that something sort of odd was happening. And I can never find it on, I think I've got the year-long splits on Pro Football Reference every time. And then actually getting it to toggle to the game-by-game stats, I forget how to do every single time until I eventually just click the right button. I don't know what to do. Oh, here we go. Down a little farther. Game logs, splits. Let's find out. This looks like a button I've clicked before because the link is purple. Pro Football Reference is brilliant for a whole bunch of reasons, and also in its simplicity, it's very helpful, but occasionally you get lost in the UI. I do now have the actual numbers here, though. So just as some background on Thornhill's 2020 season, he plays 64% of the snaps in Week 1, then 99% in Week 2, 100%, 97, 99, 100%. That's through Week 6. And then 68, 84, 81 through Week 9. Now, somewhere in that midseason mark and a little bit afterwards, we started seeing a lot more Dan Sorensen, and Spags was doing some different things defensively. Now, Spags does a lot of great stuff and different stuff in terms of personnel, playing different spots, but Thornhill was excellent up until he got hurt in Week 17 in that rookie campaign. And so you see him playing all these snaps and not being fully himself on tape, but it's still pretty good. But then you see his work come back down again. 19% of the snaps in Week 10, then 69%, 30%, 47%, 40, 28. And then the biggest red flag of them all, in Week 17, where the Chiefs had nothing to play for, they were playing backups. Juan Thornhill played every single defensive snap exactly 1 year after his ACL, at least by week of the season. I don't know by the day, but by week of the season. He tore his ACL in Week 17. The year prior, he played 100% of the snaps there at the end of the year. And then in the playoffs, he still kind of played a bit part. He was a part-time player in the playoffs as well. 33% of the snaps in the divisional round, 76% of the snaps in the AFC Championship game, and just 27% of the snaps in the Super Bowl, which was his lowest total since that Week 11 game against the Rams. So, actually, against the Raiders. I saw LR, and I was, wait a second, the Rams, hold on.
It's understandable.
Did they do that? Did they play the Rams last year? No, they didn't. What did I do there? LVR is still weird to me, I guess. I won't call them Oakland ever again, but LVR.
LAR and LVR. I mean, what's the difference between A and a V? One's just upside down.
Just upside down. Now, you could say Josh.
And
now,
also, you're missing that little middle part that makes the difference between an A and a V.
But if the V was upside down, you would fill that in with your brain, you know?
Come on, Beards.
What I should have kept in mind, and I eventually, to be fair, did catch myself on, is hold on. They did not play the Rams last year. What did I just say? I caught myself. Moving too fast. But so you see Thornhill playing a part-time role. And we talked about that a ton, especially in that middle chunk of the season where he was getting very limited time. And Beards, I'm highlighting which clip we'll go to here. I need to make sure you're focused in. We're moving quick here on this opening toss.
You're throwing me off. You're not going in order.
Yeah, I know. If you were looking at the Google Doc, it'd still be pretty easy to indicate. But
Mm-hmm.
we're producing. We're
I've
producing
got
on
the
air.
clip pulled up. I'm ready.
Looking
I'm
at
ready.
Google Doc, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. Beards has a lot of screens out here.
I've got 9 screens in here.
That's right. But so we had reason to believe that there was something not fully clicking for Thornhill, but then he did play pretty well in the playoffs, and up until he played almost not at all again in the Super Bowl. So Thornhill talked a little bit on Sunday about the fact that he was honestly never fully 100% last year.
Honestly, I had to play it off a little bit. I wasn't at 100%. But it was just more about the mental. Like, I had to tell myself, okay, it's going to hurt, but you got to play through it. So that's why when the end of the season came, you saw me making more plays just because it's more mental. And I just pushed myself through that mental block. And then I just started to play a lot better.
He was making more plays there, that's for sure. But then he still did have a somewhat smaller role, which is, again, kind of strange. But if you stitch it all together in the full picture, I think it makes a little more sense. It really did look earlier in the season as he was getting his playing time sort of, cut down, trimmed down a little bit, and then kind of the bottom fell out. It looked like he was a step slower, and he said he was.
See, I had conversations with Tyron when I tore my ACL. He'd been through it 2 times, and he was telling me that there was going to be some times I was frustrated and I was going to be like a step slower on the play or things like that. And I saw that during the season. There was multiple times I could have made an interception or knocked the ball down, but I was half a second too late. But the biggest thing is just, staying confident, keep working with Rick and the guys, strengthening my knee, stay on top of recovery, and I'll definitely be back to where I was my rookie year.
And so I think it's honestly reasonable to say that it is still a little bit of a continuing process, if not now at this. I mean, he was at camp. To be at camp, you have to have some amount of injury kind of hangover to be there when the rookies and quarterbacks report. The rest of the veterans showed up this afternoon and will practice tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So there's something going on there in terms of what his physical recovery is at right now and still maybe having a little bit more to go. But it certainly puts last year in a different context. And now he's had this entire offseason of rehab, strengthening that knee. And as he mentioned with Tyrann Mathieu has torn his ACL twice. That burst can come back. It's just not going to be there right away.
Yeah, so, essentially, to simplify things for listeners, if you're wondering what allows somebody to go, you can pretty much sum it up to still undergoing some sort of rehab. If a player needs to rehab some is still with an injury, and rehab can literally mean to major rehab, still in the process, to just the very little stuff, kind of that final spot. It can literally be anything. He's just still doing some stuff to come back from the knee.
On Sunday, to put a cap on that, Thornhill and Taco were both on the field going through drills and stuff. Armani Watts, on Sunday at least, was standing off to the side with his helmet off.
Yeah.
So what Watts is working through is probably not quite to the point of what Taco and DeAndre Baker was out there as well. Yeah. He spoke to the media, and I can summarize some of the things again. We also heard from Baker and Kane Doe, but neither of them were incredibly long-winded, in the clips they have. But there was some kind of interesting stuff from Baker, saying he's feeling pretty close to being back to 100%. But he broke his leg in Week 17. So if there's a lesson to learn about Juan Thornhill here, talking about how he had to kind of play it off a little bit last year, I think it would be a little silly to expect DeAndre Baker to be at his absolute best right this second. But it is good to see him out there doing work and getting up to speed a little bit. Again, I'm not sure I'd have him starting Week 1 in your roster projections, but does project to be a real part of the Chiefs defense. So it was good to hear from him, but I digress. So that's some of the physical stuff with Thornhill, and that's important to note, just something to file away and to keep in your head as we go from here. But there was a second kind of storyline that came from his presser that I thought was really interesting, and it sparked for me with something he said right at the beginning of his presser. He was asked about, just being out at training camp again. And he was saying that he was very glad to be in St. Joe, and said he was glad that he got called in a couple days early, which is, again, because of the injuries, he was able to do that. Very few veterans were up there over the weekend. And I thought, you get called into work early and you say you're happy to be there, right? I was curious to see if we could dig in on that a little bit with Thornhill to see, are you actually glad to be sleeping on a dorm bed 48 hours before you were planning on it originally? Or, are you just kind of grinding through and getting a couple extra days of work and rehab in? So I asked Thornhill about the early arrival and about the fact that being there with a bunch of rookies, with no other veterans in that defensive backfield, that he kind of became the veteran of that group for a couple days. So I asked if he likes that veteran role, being able to kind of be the old guy in the secondary, take on that mentorship role for everybody back there in the defensive backfield, and how he's felt going through those last couple days.
Yeah, I love it. Just because of the guys, I was once a rookie, and with Tyron, we were going through the playbook at the same time, but he had a little bit more. He was a little ahead of me. But with me being a vet out here, there's some rookies that's not really sure how camp's going to go. Basically, I don't have to say a lot. Just tell them to follow me. And if there's calls that they don't know, I'll communicate and walk them through it. If they mess up on a play, it's okay. Everyone, you're going to make mistakes. Just get through it, forget the play, and move on.
That's something that I think we project on guys a lot. I mean, to just be very pointed as I'm thinking about it now. I wasn't thinking about it when I was sitting there yesterday. But the Frank Clark conversations all eventually got somewhere really, really sort of unproductive when you talk about, leadership. Leadership is a very difficult, it's an important thing in a locker room and on the field, but it's a difficult thing to have the logic of and to see in some form. It seems pretty evident with Tyrann Mathieu, right? Mm-hmm. I remember vividly, much more vividly than I would like to remember, Eric Berry literally going up to linebackers and putting his hand on their shoulders and moving them at various points in Bob Sutton's defense. And I don't know if it's because he was the only one that understood Bob Sutton's too complicated defense or because he was making some sort of a call on the field at the time. I don't know what was what, but I remember seeing that multiple times, and every time it was so frustrating because it was indicative of a larger problem that the Chiefs defense had. But those are relatively specific and rare examples of calling out signals and pointing at guys. You see Anthony Hitchens or Tyrann Mathieu on this defense kind of being the leader on the field. But then you also have the element of what happens whenever there's a power vacuum, if you will. Now, look, I don't think that Juan Thornhill becoming more of a leader makes Tyrann Mathieu extremely expendable or anything like that. But if Mathieu is not out there, if he doesn't get an extension and he's not here next year, or if he gets hurt and misses a couple of games, or if he gets hurt and misses a lot of games, whatever it is, what happens whenever the familiar voice isn't always there in your ear? Who steps up for it? I thought that was interesting from Thornhill, and you could see if you want to go back and watch the video stream of the pressers, the very beginning of his answer, he had a huge smile on his face saying, yeah, I love it. I love this role and being able to, maybe I'm talking and I'm making all the calls, but also two things from within there also that really jump out to me. One is saying, hey, look at me, do what I'm doing, and you're going to be fine. That takes a little confidence to say that. Sure. And to be able to be the example setting there for everybody else, I think is pretty neat. And then also to be wise enough here, still in a very young career, in his third training camp, not exactly a 10-year vet, but to say, hey, you're going to miss a call. You're going to make a mistake. The worst thing you can do is sit there and dwell on it. Let it go. Everyone makes mistakes, and let's keep these things moving. But the other thing that came a couple questions later in the presser from yesterday that I thought was, he tells a great story here. It has not just been him trying to, pushing himself in all of these positions to try to lead a little bit. He also has a bit of a conspiracy theory about a walkthrough from last season.
The biggest thing with him, I think, is just turning me into a leader. Because I noticed my rookie season, there was a time I was really quiet, not saying much, Tyrann making a lot of calls. And I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that he told Tyrann not to say something in walkthroughs one day. Like, he told Tyrann not to speak and basically made me make every single call. And I was like, there's something going on. Like, Tyrann's not making any calls. I started making every single call loud. And from that point, I just started getting louder and louder. And I feel like that's just him turning me into a leader.
Sorry, that was his rookie season. And he there is Steve Spagnuolo, obviously. In his rookie season, I thought that story was great because it's kind of, it's throwing somebody into a position to see what they'll do there. Mm-hmm. And when Thornhill was kind of thrust into that spot, you take that from his rookie season, and then you think about him developing that way, and then what he looks like in sort of his sophomore campaign, even though he's obviously dealing with the rehab of the ACL and whatnot. Well, then you get to a place this year where you get to be at training camp early. How are you going to command a practice? There will probably be a practice this year that Tyrann Mathieu is not a full participant in. He's a veteran. He probably doesn't need to be out there for camp every single day. yeah, and no shade to like Armani Watts or whatever, but you want to have a guy that can step in a role like that, and the defense as a whole doesn't skip a beat. Now, Thornhill and Matthew are not the same type of player. They are not the same level of player right now. I think Thornhill is excellent, and I'm very hopeful to see him a year and a half removed from an ACL instead of just a year. I think his ceiling is crazy high, and I like the style of football that he plays. So I'm not saying that if Matthew disappears again by a lack of an extension or by an injury, which I think he's still going to get an extension just for the record, maybe we're talking about Thornhill taking this role on more in 2 or 3 years from now. Maybe when Matthew's career, we're talking about Matthew's career being done as opposed to just this contract, whatever it is. You want to have that guy that you can trust. Also, think about what happens if Anthony Hitchens is in his last season with the Chiefs, which seems like, if not a foregone conclusion, like a very probable conclusion. If you're talking about a future with or without Tyrann Mathieu, but probably without Anthony Hitchens, and eventually, probably again after the season, without Frank Clark, and as you see those changes happening, I thought it was very interesting to get to hear a little bit, as we spend all this time talking about the intangibles of leadership, of Spagnuolo and Matthew probably collaboratively seeing something in Thornhill as a rookie and wanting to not just let him ride in the sidecar, but say, hey, we want you to develop into a leader of this defense. I'll tell you this, unless he gets a head coaching job, Spags is going to be in Kansas City longer than Tyrann Mathieu, longer than Frank Clark, if he wants to be, longer than Chris Jones, longer than all of these guys. And so, if you can never have to live in a world without one of the leaders in every unit of your defense, that's going to be better for everybody, for the continuity. And even if Spags does get a head coaching job after this season, you're going to have, hopefully, a pair of safeties that know they can make every call and that are happy to be in that leadership role, that do not shy away from it, but really embrace it now that it's been sort of offered to them. So it may be a bit of a minute thing to spend 15 minutes on, but especially the combination of being there to ask and hear the answers and watch his responses to all these things and to see him at practice yesterday. The veterans, again, didn't go today in that group, and they'll all be out there again tomorrow. But I just found it very, very interesting and something to keep in mind as the Chiefs' defense takes different forms, as Juan Thornhill's role changes, and as we see what his snap counts look like coming into this season and what he looks like on the field with the rest of his teammates. Those are all things, everything we just talked about here are all things that I will certainly be remembering when we're actually watching him play football again. So there's that. Anything else from you, Rudy? I just talked for a very long time about a 20-second soundbite because I got to ask the question.
Well, I mean, hey, that's how all good rants start, right?
I guess that's probably
I would
that's how
say,
it works. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like again, like going back to that story, putting players, especially like in practices and during your rookie, right? Like throwing stuff at them to see what you got. Like if you're Spags, that's how you can build. But also to like not really tell them, right? Just be like, hey, Tyrann, don't do this stuff, and let's just see what Juan does. Like or not even necessarily for Thornhill, but let's just see who is the guy who steps up and starts talking more, right? Like to find out who those future leaders are, because the day is going to come where Matthew's not here, and in theory Thornhill will be here, and maybe that's because of injuries, maybe that's because Matthew leaves in free agency, whatever that case may be. It could happen this year. It could happen 3 years from now, right? Like there's going to be a time where Juan Thornhill is looked at, especially when you look at the cornerback situation. Charvarius Ward's the oldest guy in that group too. Yeah. Like there's a lot of youth around, so to have that other guy who's to step up and to essentially start building more leaders among the secondary, like it's. I mean, one, I think it just kind of further shows why I like Spags as much as I do, because I just think that is a really good thing to be looking and thinking out. And also it shows why I'm so, like you, so high on Juan Thornhill, because I think he has a chance to be a really special player for a long time for this Chiefs defense. And as a type of player who is safety-wise insanely different from Tyrann Mathieu, because he is just kind of more of the, that free safety, that deep safety kind of ball hog guy, right? Like he's the guy who can cover so much ground, make more. Tyrann Mathieu makes plenty of plays on the ball, but just he's the guy who will cover a lot of ground to go
typically,
do it.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Which is why they complement each other so well. Tyrann Mathieu typically handles more the medium, with Juan Thornhill more over the top. It's not only is Juan Thornhill obviously like a really good player, but those two just fit so perfectly together because it kind of they help complement each other and kind of like those two together is a really good combination.
I have one of the rosters, which does not include a long snapper, by the way, the Chiefs signed today. James Winchester on the COVID reserve list.
Oklahoma.
So, are you kidding me?
Yeah, James Winchester went to Oklahoma.
Unbelievable.
I do not know where the new guy went to.
I did think you were calling your shot on the new guy.
Nope.
Whose name, obviously, I should, I probably mention. It's 2 first names.
No joke.
I think there's a Scott in there.
Literally 3 minutes ago, shared an article that was written on Arrowhead Report about the Chiefs signing him, and I've already forgotten his name. John Gray.
Drew Scott.
Nailed it.
I thought there was a Scott there.
Yeah.
If you flip his name, he's Baylor's head coach. There's what you can keep in mind there. Drew Scott, former Raider, and I think Cowboy, and I think something else. I thought maybe they'd do a little long snapper competition. Maybe it's a camp body, but it seems like it might be even. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets cut as soon as Winchester is back.
Yeah.
But Winchester's on the COVID list. You need a long snapper.
So I typed in Drew Scott.
Did it give you Scott Drew?
No, but you know who it did give me? And I didn't realize it was his name. Andrew Alfred Scott is one of the Property brothers. He goes by Drew Scott. So apparently the Chiefs signed a Property brother to be their long snapper.
That's gonna be tough for SEO in the story there. There's a lot of Scott Drew Scott, and then there's also this long snapper.
Did he go to K-State? Yeah, he went to K-State.
Drew Scott did?
Yeah, Drew Scott went to K-State.
All right. Well, you know what? Shame on me.
I'll be easy to remember.
Which one?
Apparently they worked
great question. Which one? The long snapper, right?
Yeah.
All right. Where did the Property brother go to college?
Well, he's Canadian. So
where did he go to uni?
Calgary University.
Is
University
that true?
of Calgary.
Is that actually true? Have you verified this? No, I don't want to have. I want you to make 100% sure that we're saying we're giving the right college that the Property brother went to.
Yep, University of Calgary is his alma mater.
That's awesome.
Married to Lindsay Fan as of 2018.
I don't need
that. Would be Linda.
Linda Fan. Jonathan Scott is his brother, also a Property brother. Are they twins?
Rudy and I are at the same place. We're both just at Wikipedia.
You know what would really be great? Because someday it's really hot out. Today's actually not the most miserable days in terms of where the heat is at.
Where the brother went to college?
Calgary.
University of
Montreal.
Toronto.
No. Southern Alberta Institute of Technology.
That was my next guess.
Mm-hmm.
What is it again?
It's the MIT of Canada.
It's Southern Alberta Institute of Technology.
Yeah, the MIT of Canada.
It's very close to having a profane acronym.
Yeah.
It's been very hot out, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's only going to get hotter. And to go back to something that Rudy was saying earlier, if you do need to cool down or whatever, it's always nice to be able to lend a fan. It would have been a little funnier if I would have been able to say it right after you said her name, but the conversation kind of trailed off again, and so bringing it back only made it more painful.
It's pretty good. Also, I think Publicist maybe got a hold of the Wikipedia page. Public Image. They are known for their goofy senses of humor and for how much they poke fun at each other, often during public appearances. Doesn't feel like a Wikipedia. That feels like a public, a PR person got a hold of this.
Or a fan.
Yeah. How far away do you think this show is from getting a Wikipedia page? Like, we've been on terrestrial radio for a while. We're not just the podcast, We've got bajillion watts.
I'd say we're a lot closer.
America's largest all sports radio station.
I'd say we're a lot closer now. I assume... if our listeners are like us,
we don't want them to do it.
They will think about doing it. They'll say this is a great idea, and then it'll just get forgotten about.
I'm on the 810 Wikipedia page. Excuse me, it's the WHB Wikipedia page. Mm-hmm. But I think we just need. There's a lot of good hyperlinks and stuff, but it really, it looks like I feel like we could at least get a. Like a current full roster up there or something, and then maybe that's we should have a hyperlink to almost entirely sports. I have no idea, dude. I do not spend nearly as much time on the 810 Wikipedia page as you may guess.
Yeah.
You mean you don't go in there and make all those edits?
No, I don't. There was something fun. Let me see if I can find.
Decline of AM music.
WHB started experimental broadcast on April 10th, 1922. 1922. Radio's been around for a while.
100 years is of WHB's next year.
Don't tell me to break beards like I don't know what time it is. It's not my first rodeo. I know it's 7:34. I know we're going to have to take a break before I come back and yell about Deshaun Watson a whole bunch. I want to find out something that happened on April 10th, 1922, and then we'll take a break. Tell me to break. The U.S. president, who do you think was president on April 10th, 1922? When WHB in its first form it started experimental broadcast.
Was it Hoover?
No.
Clinton.
No.
Was it
Washington?
Was it the guy after Hoover?
Benjamin Franklin.
I don't know who's after Hoover.
I don't know.
Garfield the cat.
Warren G. Harding.
Nailed it.
Oh.
Pope Pius XI was leading the Catholic Church.
I thought you were going to say he was the president. I was like, well, there's a plot twist.
Apparently there's even more information I think that right there is good enough to say, hey.
Gas was 22 cents.
Not 810, I guess, but WHB with those call letters. Warren G. Harding was president. That's bonkers. That was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's take a break. Whenever we come back, I'm going to yell about something much more important than this.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
But you like just open the door a little bit and sort of stick your face out. And you're like, hey, hi, how are you? I'm like, hi, I am Herbert Hoover with Hoover Vacuums. Would you like a vacuum today? And we're like, no, I really don't. Be like, oh, but we're Kansas football. We really suck.
You made Herbert Hoover a vacuum salesman?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Now for something very different. This started being weird as I was walking up into the media tent yesterday morning in St. Joe for Chiefs camp. There started being some reports that Deshaun Watson was going to show up for Texans camp, basically to do like COVID testing at least, and to not get fined $50,000, which apparently can't be waived in the CBA and everything. And my thought at the time was, I didn't know that he was allowed to show up for training camp. Because I just sort of, I don't know why, if you would have said, hey, quick, don't think too hard. What's Deshaun Watson's status? I was like, I think he's on the commissioner's exempt list. And he's not. He's not been placed there at any point throughout the nearly 24 sexual misconduct, sexual assault allegations that have piled up over the last few months. I think all of them with various masseuses that he hired and then allegedly harassed with a bunch of sort of cohesive stories. And then some of the masseuses have tried the civil suits. I think at least a couple are only pushing in the criminal process. At least one is not putting her name out there to get any money or any criminal charges at all, but just went through a Sports Illustrated article that was all very thoroughly vetted. And anyway, we talked about that whole story quite a bit as it was all unfolding. And then yesterday, the story was not Deshaun Watson is showing up despite the sexual assault allegations. It was Deshaun Watson is showing up despite him still wanting out of Houston. And I thought that was really weird because it basically takes chapter 1 and chapter 4 of this sort of Deshaun Watson saga and totally skips chapters 2 and 3. And then tweets started coming out this morning. I've got 5 different major reporters. Here's some different tweets that went out today. Ian Rappaport with a video clips from Good Morning Football. The full breakdown of what happens next with the Texans and Deshaun Watson, who has a full no-trade clause and will eventually decide where he's willing to go. Rappaport. The Texans are now willing to listen to offers on quarterback Deshaun Watson, per me and Tom Pelissero, but it will take a lot, as it should. Tom Pelissero. The Texans are now willing to listen and have been for some time to trade offers for star quarterback Deshaun Watson. Multiple sources tell me and Rappaport. But the price is high for a player of his caliber, and it should be. It'd likely take at least 3 first-round picks and more. There's a phrase in this one. Tell me if this one makes your skin crawl. When he reported to camp Sunday, Watson was respectful, but his demeanor reiterated he doesn't want to be in Houston. The question is, will a team step up with the type of massive offer that would compel the Texans to move him now? Watson would have to waive his no trade. Chris Mortensen. For Deshaun Watson, the Texans' price has been some combination of 5 high draft picks and starting caliber players per 2 league sources. Field Yates, a huge price for any team to trade, but no 2 teams are better equipped to do so than the Eagles and the Dolphins. Adam Schefter, Deshaun Watson's personal quarterback coach, predicted Friday while taping the Adam Schefter podcast that his client would be traded by Sunday, as in yesterday. You may hear in all of those things, there are a lot of very, very NFL reporter phrases. There's a lot of evaluation of the process and what trade compensation might look like. And universally, no mention of the sexual assault allegations that were the NFL's biggest story for a month and totally changed the game on when and where he might be traded and who might be interested in trading for him. Mike Garafolo on NFL Network today described the accusations as, quote, a lot of he said, she said, when it is actually he said and then about 22 she saids. Plus, I think at least another one, maybe a couple more that have not ended up in the actual lawsuits. It just gave me a very gross, very disappointed feeling in the way that we are now talking about Deshaun Watson, even as it is deeply unsurprising. Because sports media just does this sometimes. there can be such a desperation to get back to what is, in the grand scheme of things, the easy stuff. Trade destinations, trade compensation. Next on First Take, would you give up Jalen Hurts and 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson if you're the Eagles? We do that bleep all the time, and it's easy. It's cotton candy. You can grab a piece of it and feel like you've got something substantial in your hand, and then you eat it, and it dissolves into just a little bit of sugar. That's what most of First Take, that's what most of sports talk is. And that's fine. Everybody loves cotton candy at some point in some form. Everybody eats the candy. Everybody wants some empty calories every once in a while. And sometimes we'll have even more meaningful sports conversations where it's like actually not just pure hypotheticals. And that's a little more useful, but it's still not, in the grand scheme of society, it's not very much. But in that rush to get back to the trade packages, the difficult stuff gets left in the dust, even whenever it is extremely relevant and extremely important to the conversation. And it's also why it's really important for people in sports media to not be completely one-dimensional sports machines, because there are different levels to this also. Colin Kaepernick was not just about his performance. His place in the league was way more complicated than that. To pretend that it was purely about football would be ignorant in a way that I think very, very, very few people would be willing to continue to argue now. Now, do you want to get into all of that on your show or whatever? There's some wiggle room there, but if we're going to talk about Kaepernick, you need to understand what he's saying. Deshaun Watson, very different reasons, not about just his performance on the field right now. He would have gotten traded over the course of this offseason if all this stuff didn't come out, or the Texans would have smoothed things over. It would have been one of the two. He's still in Houston. If you say he's still in Houston and I say why, you have to be able to say, well, there have been about 24 credible sexual assault allegations. And to bail out of the conversation before you identify that is failing to do your job well. It's failing to present the entire story. You have great reporters and great commentators that are totally whiffing because, God, that's complicated and kind of gross, and there's nothing super official right now, so I'm going to put my hands up, where you can say, hey, teams are interested, and here's the price, as they also continue to say what is going to be the result of these civil cases, of a potential criminal case, of these other reports. But you have to include all of that. I would love to be able to have the pre-sexual assault allegation conversation about Deshaun Watson that is, if you're the Dolphins, what do you do? That's fun. It's cotton candy, but it's fun. The cotton candy is gone now, though. There's way more to this story that has to be addressed in a way that is intellectually honest and doesn't leave out huge important chunks of this stuff. If you don't really want to cover or really want to talk about some of the off-the-field stuff that doesn't directly come back to the field, to pick from the last offseason, the voting rights stuff that Patrick Mahomes and Tyrann Mathieu really led for the Chiefs. I think that is very, very relevant if you're a Chiefs fan, if you're a Mahomes or Tyrann Mathieu fan, but it's probably not going to lead to a different performance on the field, right? I think it's worth talking about, but how do you talk about it? If you miss it, it's not the biggest thing in the world. If you listen to them talk about social justice things and moving the NFL on stuff like the Black Lives Matter movement, I think that is very, very relevant, but it's not probably going to lead to people getting traded. Well, now we're talking about a pandemic. We're talking about masks and vaccinations and the COVID-19 /reserve list and again, the responsibility of vaccinations, the competitive advantage, Cole Beasley, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold. Those things are extremely relevant to what happens on the football field, because if you're not vaccinated, you're more likely to have worse symptoms if you do get a breakthrough case, and what it does for the rest of your team. If your team is not as vaccinated as your opponent or as others, will have on the field consequences. And especially, to circle back on the Deshaun Watson thing, this one absolutely impacts everything else that it touches, because it is why he will or won't get traded, what he will or won't be traded for. You cannot only tell part of this story, and yet you find people all throughout sports media insisting on trying to do that all the time. It is the biggest problem inherent to stick to sports. It's not just that I think that mindset is boring. It also makes you a piece of paper that will blow away in the wind as soon as anything outside of that comes in to impact your previously hermetically sealed bubble of sports. And that's not how it works. It's individual players that are making up these teams. All of this stuff does actually work together. You can say lead with the on-the-field stuff, focus on the on-the-field stuff. I think that's all perfectly fine, and almost universally is how it actually goes. But the coverage of these last couple days with Deshaun Watson has been baffling to me because, and this is all, here's one other issue with that. And this is where especially the objective news breakers really trip over themselves. And it happens in commentary also because everybody buys shoes, right?
I don't.
You don't actually.
No. Never bought a pair of shoes.
But if you are unwilling to make a value judgment, you are eventually going to stop saying anything. Mm-hmm. You are just going to have vapor coming out of your mouth if you don't say, I think everyone should be vaccinated, and I think that everyone on a sports team should be vaccinated. Okay, well, then you have a starting point for the rest of your opinion to be. You can't not have an opinion on the information around Deshaun Watson. If you say, well, my goal here is to be objective, you can assess to the best of your abilities, but it's not he said, she said, because it's he said, she 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 also said, also she said, and she said. That is not something that you can zoom out on and go, you know what, it's just too complicated for me. I bet he gets traded for 4 first-round picks. Because now you failed to do your job. We would never have a conversation like this around a quarterback coming off of an ACL tear. Joe Burrow, it sounds like he might not play in the preseason. Mm-hmm. If you said, Joe Burrow's not going to play in the preseason, and you gave no further context, I said, why? And you went, who's to say? Well, no, it's because his ACL was torn last year, and the Bengals are going to try to keep him healthy and not try to overwork him early. But if you end up trying to do that for a much larger conversation with more societal importance by a factor of millions, you fail to successfully do your job. Turning a blind eye does not make it disappear. And that happens all the time. I was going to throw it a break, but Beard's made an executive decision, and so now we won't. Rudy, your thoughts? Beards, I would like to say for the second time this show, I do know what time it is.
That's fine.
I was going to wrap that up and then throw it a break. That's fine.
Yeah, I would say that the thing that is most surprising about it is the, you can say the very simple, like from the reporter's point of view, because I understand Adam Schefter, especially him, like not wanting to say anything specific, like give specific details or statements, because that's not really his thing. I'm surprised that he doesn't do like the, pending all the, the very generic.
Mention it.
Just pending what comes from the trial, or not the trial, but from the allegations, right?
Yep.
Or allegations are holding it up. Just like the very general, basic, vanilla statement, right? Like you don't have to go super specific.
That
you don't
simply
have to give
lists it as a
opinions.
factor.
Yes, just like the vanilla statement. I'm surprised that nobody mentioned it, and I'm sure somebody did out there, but it's out of the big guys. It sounds like basically nobody did, and that's surprising.
Here's the other thing that happens behind the scenes a lot, and this was evident for some of the Aaron Rodgers stuff we might talk about later, but you have people getting their information from different sources.
Yep.
Every time you have somebody tweeting it out, not mentioning the allegations that are not fully set in stone at this point, right? And they do talk about how important it is for them to get the haul that they deserve and how Deshaun Watson's worth all these picks. That benefits the Houston Texans for that to be out there. It benefits Deshaun Watson for the allegations not to end up back in all of these reports, for the conversations to be about how great he is and how he's being respectful.
They want people to forget about it all.
And it's just, it's a he said, she said. It'll get figured out at some point.
She said, she said, she said, she said, she said.
And
she said,
it benefits everybody except for all of the women that said they were sexually assaulted.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Center.
I'm Steve Lennox. Green Bay Packers and quarterback Aaron Rodgers might have a solution with training camp scheduled to get underway on Tuesday in Wisconsin. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported today Packers willing to make concessions to persuade Rodgers to return to the team and play for at least one more season. ESPN NFL analyst Mina Kimes today on NFL Live.
I actually think that's a pretty good outcome for the team because either you win the championship this year, and I'm guessing he stays because everybody's happy, or you have a valuable trade asset. And you get that one final season with him, and you can trade him, and it's not like you didn't get anything out of it because I guarantee you, in 1 year, some football team is going to give up a lot for Aaron Rodgers, and then you can transition to your rookie. To me, that's actually a pretty decent result for Green Bay, especially considering all of the drama this offseason.
Mina Kimes today on NFL Live. Houston Texans are now willing to move quarterback Deshaun Watson in a trade. NBA Draft Thursday from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Coverage on ESPN Radio 7 Eastern. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reporting Grizzlies and Pelicans finalizing a trade that involves Jonas Valanciunas and the 17th overall pick in this week's draft going to the Pelicans in exchange for Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, and the 10th overall pick going to Memphis. Other draft picks also involved in the trade. Also from Adrian Wojnarowski, Pistons considering three players, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, for the number 1 overall pick in Thursday's draft. Red Sox home tonight at Fenway against the Blue Jays. 5th inning on ESPN TV. Red Sox up a run 3-2. Rafael Devers a home run solo shot in the third. His 27th of the season.
Hey, it's Shea Cornette and Tuesday on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. The Packers report to training camp, and we'll finally find out if their star quarterback is present. And the latest from Adam Schefter. That's Tuesday morning on KJZ on ESPN Radio.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
I gotta say, I'm Venmoing Rudy $1 right now.
With Joshua Brisco.
Venmo here, Matt Derrick knows things.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
So many things have been learned over the first few days of Kansas City Chiefs training camp. In fact, I have gone from thinking the Chiefs are good at football to thinking that they're bad at football, and then back to good again, and then to great, and then to bad, and then to good again. And nobody better to talk about it with than Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. And Matt, I'm sure you feel exactly the same way. Truly transformative stuff over the first few days of Chiefs camp, especially today whenever I saw that not even the quarterbacks, the veteran quarterbacks were out there, just purely rookies today.
You just have not truly appreciated and experienced training camp at its finest until you have allowed Anthony Gordon and Jody Fortson to dazzle you with their stuff.
Listen, I mean, Jody Fortson's been dazzling me with his stuff for now, I guess, years, even though he's still rookie camp sort of eligible.
Maurice French will dazzle you with his stuff as well.
I believe it's pronounced for French, just, from one bona fide journalist to another. I just don't want you to mispronounce his name.
There's a lot of F's in there.
There's just two right at the beginning. But I was up there yesterday, and we got to talk about a few of the things that were sort of interesting to this point. And we can get into some of the presser things as well. Probably more actual information to be gleaned from those than from some of the things on the field. Which again, this first stage was just some veterans working back from injuries, namely Juan Thornhill, Taco Charlton, Armani Watts was out there, but at least yesterday was not working. And then a bunch of rookies and the quarterbacks. What have you seen so far on the field first? You went, you know what? That's kind of interesting. I could talk about that, or I could write about that a little bit.
There honestly nothing. The first 3 days of training camp, it's a passing camp that they come in and they do a little 7-on-7, but it's really there for the rookies to come in and try to remember everything that they learned during OTAs and get yelled at. There's a reason. People come out to training camp and they think it's like music all day long. Mm-hmm. Training camp, there's no music. Mm. They don't do anything because, the coaches want to make sure that the players can hear them. And they're not trying to simulate, crowd noise or anything like that. Guys like Mahomes, they were just coming out trying to knock off some rust. That's all they're trying to do. And some of that stuff is important. Seeing Juan Thornhill get out there and hearing what he had to say was probably the most encouraging and enlightening thing of the first 3 days, and I think that's probably something that Chiefs fans should be pretty happy about. But you know what? I mean, until the whole team arrives and until they start hitting, we don't know anything yet.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Thornhill because that's where we started the show today. It's what I think is interesting. And, of course, I think any press conference answer is about 15 times more interesting if it's an answer to my question, because then I get to just talk about how I was the one that got to ask Juan Thornhill. So that's how it goes. But I do think that he had the most interesting thing, certainly from yesterday, both in sort of his physical health as he returns from the ACL injury that he returned back to way quicker than I was anticipating as the injury happened, and then dealt with that throughout the course of kind of an up and down season for him last year. And then also some of the mental stuff of both coming back from the injury and also his work in a leadership role. So can you unpack what you found most interesting from Thornhill?
Yeah, to me, I think it just simply kind of some of the things were things we've heard before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Juan Thornhill had mentioned the fact that, when he first came back, and remember, once again, because there was no offseason last year, it wasn't until he got on the field in August at practices that, he was really starting to actually get to do something, and had not had any chance to, be around guys. And, I can say this, I mean, from rehabbing my own injuries. I mean, I'm not a professional athlete, but it's a whole lot easier when you have help and have people around you. And I remember, back when, the Chiefs, I think it was 2015, they had all the guys with ACL injuries, Derrick Johnson, Mike DeVito, I think Jamal Charles was in there too. And all these guys were all, coming back from from Achilles injuries. Mm-hmm. And, the fact that they had to do it together was a big part of their recovery.
Yeah.
Juan Thornhill talking about being alone, trying to return from that ACL. I mean, it rang really true for me because I think that was a really tough spot for him. And then coming in, and the way that last season was, I don't know that, Juan Thornhill was ever on the right track last season. And, and to be honest, considering when he suffered that injury, because remember, it was week 17.
Yeah.
Even coming back for week 1 of the regular season was ahead of schedule. I mean, even though guys come back from ACLs faster and faster, that was still a compressed timeline. And it just seemed like last year that one was just never comfortable out there at any point. Maybe finally by the end of the season, but at that point, it's a little bit too late to just all of a sudden go into the postseason and say, okay, well, Juan's 100% now, so he's going to be starting. They just weren't in a spot to do that. So if the Chiefs are going to, be a top 10 defense this year, I think that Juan Thornhill starting and being confident is a big part of that. And right now, it seems like that's where his mind is at, and I think that's where the Chiefs are at with it.
I mean, there's also kind of the beyond Tyrann Mathieu thing. I don't think that the hopeful growth of Juan Thornhill is like leading to him replacing the voice of Tyrann Mathieu and certainly not replacing him on the field. But having another guy kind of from a younger class be able to step into that role for the long term, I think is probably pretty encouraging because Anthony Hitchens probably in his last year in Kansas City. Frank Clark probably in his last year in Kansas City. Right now, Tyrann Mathieu is, but I don't expect that to actually hold true. But I do think that kind of looking to what the next iteration of the Chiefs defense looks like also probably has to have Juan Thornhill in a starring role there, I think. Do you think that's fair, or am I overrating it?
No, I think it is fair. And I mean, I go back to when I think that Chiefs defense looked its best over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And that was clearly in the second half of 2019 and into the postseason that season. And particularly the portion where Juan Thornhill was playing in that second half before the injury. I mean, a big part of it was because Thornhill was effectively taking care of the back end, and it was allowing, Tyrann Mathieu to play anywhere the Chiefs needed him. Last year, they didn't have that luxury as much. I mean, they had to maybe put some Mathieu in some situations that they really would prefer not to. Not that he couldn't handle them, but just really that he's more effective in other spots.
Yeah.
I mean, if what Juan Thornhill can do is become the leader of the back third of that defense and just Tyrann, front is yours. Hitch is in the middle, but hey, you're the guy. We're going to move you everywhere. You're the guy you're the chess piece that the defense has to account for in every single play. And if they get back to that again, then that's going to be a really effective defense. But once again, a big part of that is that you have to have Thornhill on that back end able to, use his speed, use his, natural instincts, because he can do things in the back end that, Dan Sorensen can't do, that other guys can't do. Tyrann Mathieu can do them, but you'd rather be able to deploy Mathieu somewhere else.
Yeah. I don't know that this necessarily changes or has changed since last time I talked to you, but since we're talking about Tyrann Mathieu, I think you still expect him to get an extension done sometime soon. But are you surprised if I would have asked you about it a month ago, 2 months ago, which I'm sure I did, if I would have asked you right after the season, would you have been surprised that he didn't have an extension by the day he reported to training camp? And do you have a timeline for when you think it does get done, if you do think it does get done still?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit on both sides of my mouth here in saying that I think that it was more likely than not that it would get done before the beginning of training camp.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, I would probably have said, hey, the chances are probably 50% that it gets done before the training camp.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just increases 1% every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think it's going to get done. But beginning of training camp wasn't a line of demarcation for me. I mean, I still think that the final line in the sand where you're going to say, is this really going to get done, is when they play in week 1. I mean, if you get the season underway and you don't have that Mathieu extension done yet, then that's where I'm going to really say, is this really ever going to happen? There's still plenty of time.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, the fact that it's not done, not a complication or a big deal at this point.
I love the percentage chance game. So percentage chance that the deal is done before week 1.
I should calculate based on my formula that I just gave.
You did give a formula. I will not hold you to that math if it doesn't work out perfectly.
I should know the number of days between now and the beginning of the season, which is probably, like 42, let's say?
Sure.
Maybe.
So a good 92% chance then?
If it's 42 days until the beginning of the season, then I would say it needs to be done before Sunday. So I would say we're at 59% right now. And then once you hit Sunday of week 1, it goes to probably 0.9%.
Wait, so do you think it's a 59% chance that it gets done like tomorrow, or that you're saying 59% by week 1?
59% right now, and tomorrow it goes to 60.
Right, got it.
Yeah.
And so we're getting into the high 90s by week 1.
Exactly, but then the speedometer turns over at 100.
Right,
it doesn't go to 100%.
Right.
If it doesn't get done by the time it hits 99, and they kick off in week 1, then it goes to 0.9.
The car's broken down and it's on the side of the road and nothing works anymore.
So Tyrann Mathieu, there's a 90-some% chance the deal gets done before the regular season starts. But if the regular season starts without a deal for Tyrann Mathieu, the Chiefs have an equal chance of trading for Bashaud Breeland from the Vikings in week 1.
According to my math, yeah.
That wasn't even a question as much as it was just me reviewing my notes.
Sometimes this is an art more than a science.
Yes. But, the percentages make it sound like a science, which, as you point out, it absolutely is not. So, the other thing from Sunday that is a little bit interesting, and maybe it's good to kind of connect DeAndre Baker to Juan Thornhill a little bit, because Baker said something along the lines of him being close to being 100% healthy, but we also had Juan Thornhill tell us he was lying about that all of last year, that everyone says that until they aren't anymore, or until they are again, whatever, and DeAndre Baker broke his leg in week 17. Not exactly the same type of recovery, obviously, as an ACL. I think that for a broken leg, once things are all kind of reconnected, you're a whole lot closer to being fully ready to go than you are at that point for an ACL tear. But he's gotten a lot of hype over the course of this offseason. What did you make of him being out there to talk to us on Sunday, and what we did hear from him and everything that it entails?
Yeah, I mean, the encouraging thing is that Baker was on the field. He is going through workouts. He's not starting training camp on PUP or anything like that, which, were the goals. I mean, that was definitely the timetable that the team had laid out and Baker was hoping for. So the fact that he's right where he needs to be is a good sign. I mean, if he was not able, if he wasn't running yet, couldn't cut any of those things, that would be a cause for concern. But, he's right on schedule. And it doesn't necessarily, I mean, you're right. I mean, he's not 100% yet. And so that doesn't mean you can just say pencil him in as number 2 or number 3 corner at this point. There's still a lot to go. And, and you're right. I mean, we've talked about it again with these injuries. This is pretty bad. I mean, the fractured femur is not a normal football injury.
Yeah.
So it's not like you got a lot of, data to go on and say, well, when this happens, this is how quickly guys return and everything, because it's just a small sample size. So they're in a little bit of uncharted water there. We'll see. I mean, clearly at this point, everybody's pretty optimistic about where he is and what he can do. We'll see once they get out there, what's happening. I think that a healthy DeAndre Baker is probably needed by this defense. I mean, especially when you let Bashaud Breeland go. I mean, you've brought in Mike Hughes, but I still think that you could really use DeAndre Baker being effective this year. But he's still got a few mileposts to go. I mean, this was a big one. Being ready for the beginning of training camp was a big start, but he's got a few more steps to go before you can say that, hey, this guy's going to be a part of the rotation at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's a distinct difference there between excellent step to hit, excellent signpost to clear, and finish line cleared. And I do think that's something that the collective we, I suppose, can occasionally confuse. So as we sit here the day before veterans actually start practicing at training camp, if you had to project the starting outside corners and slot corner for week 1, knowing that there's plenty of chance that it changes over the course of training camp, as a pre-camp prediction, what would your 3 guys be?
I mean, my top 3 right now would be L'Jarius Sneed, Travaris Ward, and Rashad Fenton, with Sneed and Ward being your outside guys in base defense, Sneed kicking inside when Fenton comes in and some sub packages on the outside. And then it's really just going to be up to how everybody fits in. I mean, I could certainly see Baker and Hughes working their way up. I mean, if they have great training camps, I mean, they could work their way up the lineup. I mean, they could certainly get higher in the rotation. O.P. Keys could work his way in there. I mean, a lot of guys have some opportunities. So, yeah, a lot could change. But, I mean, if they had to go play a game right now, that's who I think would be your top 3 corners.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. The thing I'm thrilled to hear you say is that you like the idea of, or expect the idea of Sneed starting outside and then kicking in. I think Spags and Reed have both talked about that a little bit over the course of the offseason, and that Reed had, I actually think it was Spags was talking about a previous stop having done that before. I cannot remember for the life of me who it was that he was talking about. But you do think that that's the most likely usage for Sneed, if you had to guess, of him starting outside but being able to kick into the slot whenever they are in sub packages?
That's what they want. I mean, I say want to a degree because I think what they'd love to see is Rashad Fenton come in and be so good as a nickel that they wouldn't have to move Sneed, that they could, maybe leave him on the outside and maybe he becomes a travel guy that could just follow around your top receiver. I mean, they still want to protect L'Jarius Sneed because as good as he looked last year, I mean, remember, 4th-round pick from smaller school, not the smallest of schools, but, not a Power 5 team or anything. So, I mean, there's still things that they don't want to overburden him with and push him too far. So they want to do what he can handle. And, yeah, I mean, they would love for him to be able to be the guy that goes back and forth inside because I think at this point they do feel like he's their best slot and their best outside corner. And it's just that, you probably need Sneed on the inside and Fenton on the outside. I mean, that's your better lineup. Even though Fenton is a pretty serviceable nickel guy too. I mean, the matter is just that Sneed's better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's some catches there. I mean, Chiefs would love it if Rashad Fenton came in and played so locked down, or DeAndre Baker came in and played so locked down that, hey, you know what? We don't need to move Sneed around too much. We can give him his spot, and maybe he is the travel guy or something of that nature. I think it maybe is a little bit too early, but the fact that the Chiefs aren't ruling that out, and I think they want to test him. They want to test Sneed during the preseason and seeing if he can handle what he can handle, and as much as he can handle, they'll give it to him.
I really like that, and I like the note of feeling like Sneed's their best corner inside and their best inside and outside corner. But the thing for me that I am just sort of rooting for, just totally subjectively now at this point, is for Snead to be able to move around like that, because I enjoyed so much what he did from the slot last year, partially being able to blitz out of the slot, like, which again always makes me laugh that like he didn't know he could do that. Spags didn't really know he could do that. They just ended up doing it at some point, and it was something that is a genuine weapon in Snead's arsenal now. So I really like the idea of him being able to be on some level sort of a baby honey badger, in terms of being able to play all over the place. Baby, let's go. Splenda Ferret, I guess. That feels like a step down from honey badger, right? Maybe L'Jarius Sneed is the Splenda Ferret.
Well, I don't even know where to go with that one. I mean,
yeah, that's fair. I didn't give you much.
I'm standing here beside myself on that one.
As you should. You should not have even have spoken back. You should have just let me sit in some dead air there, because I would have deserved it.
Yeah, I was just trying to let that one soak in and see if I had a response to that, but no, I've got nothing. But I completely agree with you, except for on the nickname part.
The most important part.
Because I think the most important thing that you can do in the NFL today is be unpredictable. Because everything you do has been seen on film.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that you can come up with unscouted looks, anytime that you can confuse the other side, that's when you get the advantage. And if you can make Snead into a guy that you could put in different spots so that, now, hey, as a defense, you not only have to figure out where Tyrann Mathieu is, you don't only have to figure out where Chris Jones is. Now you got to figure out where L'Jarius Snead is. That's a lot for a quarterback to figure out.
Yeah.
And the more of those guys that you can have that you can do unpredictable things with and can become, those guys that you have to account for, that just makes your defense better.
Yeah, I love having as many of those guys as possible. Anything from the press conferences today that caught your eye? First Mark Donovan, and then some players in the afternoon.
Yeah, and I should have all these great ideas, and this will give you just an insight into the life of a beat writer. Because right before you called, I managed to get 2 bites of my pizza that arrived 45 minutes ago.
Oh no!
Because I had to file my story,
right?
So I should have all these great insights, but now I got nothing. No, I mean it was kind of a normal check-in day. Maybe I'm becoming the jaded beat writer.
Right.
That nothing surprises me anymore.
That is inevitable. That is an inevitable evolution.
But there's a lot of storylines. But one of the things I wrote about today is that the 3 guys that we talked to have a lot to prove this year. And and that was one of the things I asked them all of them about was just what they do have to prove, because hey, McCole Hardman needs to prove he's the number 2 receiver. I mean, he needs to step up, and I think you heard a little bit about that he acknowledges that he knows this is a big year for him, and I think that the fact that McCole Hardman realizes this is a big year is important, because he needs his best. I mean, this is the year that he needs to focus. He needs to be there all the time. The fact that he's talking about working on his route tree so that he can run all the routes. If McCole Hardman's going to be the number 2 guy, he's got to do everything. He can't just, be one guy. He can't just run 9 routes all day long and hope for the deep ball. I mean, he's got to be able to do it all. And the fact that he's talking about that's a good thing. Orlando Brown seems like a guy who plays with a chip on his shoulder. And that's going to be good, because this team needs, a left tackle who's going to be a little bit nasty and trying to prove something, because, Chiefs have got to make a decision on Orlando Brown. I mean, this is a quick year. I mean, after this, you got to decide if you're going to be married to Orlando Brown or not. And I think the Chiefs will, but you've only got one season to evaluate him at that left tackle spot and how he fits in with your team. So it's going to be a big year for him, and big year for Hitch. I mean, this year is, for all intents and purposes, a contract year for Anthony Hitchens. And and I get that hey, he doesn't want to think that way. He says he's got his own goals. Doesn't share them with anybody, and that he does his own thing. And I mean, that's cool. That's certainly Anthony Hitchens. I mean, that's clearly, always his mindset. I mean, I think that's the way that he's built. He's built maybe a little bit differently than maybe an Orlando Brown and a McCole Hardman. But, I mean, this is the contract year, because even though he's got, he's around next year, Chiefs could save a lot of money cutting Anthony Hitchens.
Yeah.
And whether it's with staying with the Chiefs at a lower salary cap number or finding a job elsewhere, Anthony Hitchens needs to show that, hey, coming up on 30, he can still play. And I think that was a big part of, why he's been talking about trying to come in, slimmer, being able to run better, move better. I mean, because he knows at this point in his career, 8 years in the league, he's got to do it.
What kind of pizza did you order?
It is just a pepperoni.
Where is it from?
Nothing.
I don't think we have any sponsors anywhere around right now, pizza-wise. So.
I guess I shouldn't say I was being lazy, and then for associating lazy with the brand, but it is Papa John's. So.
I think Papa John. So.
I think it's probably the.
There's again. I don't think that there's currently a delivery pizza sponsor on 810. So I'm going to speak freely here. Power rank for me Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Domino's as sort of the big 3 delivery pizzas for you.
I would actually probably say Domino's 1, Papa John's 2, and Pizza Hut 3.
Beards is sitting up from his chair for the first time this entire segment. Beards, go ahead.
Entire show.
I think I can flip-flop either way on Domino's or Pizza Hut at 1, and then Papa John's I would put 3rd. Although I will say...
You just love Pizza Hut more than anyone I know.
It's
so
good.
I was going to throw it to you to talk about Pizza Hut.
I will say, though, Papa John's has stuffed crust pizza now. It's pretty good.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm a pretty big Domino's guy.
Rebecca had gotten some, and I had some leftovers from that today for lunch.
I do like a stuffed crust, but Domino's is my favorite delivery for sure. And I think I would go Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's. They all have their highs and lows, right?
I mean, can you guys explain to me the Pizza Hut thing? Because Pizza Hut's terrible. I mean, I'm sorry. They're just terrible.
You know what? I just looked at my sheet again. Training camp coverage here on Sports Radio 810 is brought to you by Pizza Hut. Well, it was previously brought to you by Pizza Hut. That's not true. Go ahead, Beards. Explain Pizza Hut. You're our outspoken Pizza Hut lover.
Good Pizza Hut is good. It can be hard to get sometimes, but good Pizza Hut's good. I like the thin crust personally. So
really?
that's what I like their thin crust. That's what I usually do. They have good breadsticks.
I kind of like the fried.
Is good.
I kind of like the fried bottom on that Pizza Hut gives you for like their pan, whatever. There's their pan pizza. I kind of like that, but I don't know. Rudy, do you have it? What is your ranking, Rudy?
I have not been to a Papa John, Domino's, or Pizza Hut since probably like 2013.
Dude over here is just chugging kale
That's
salad.
why he is much healthier than all of us.
Oh,
That's
well,
true.
I'm not healthy.
No.
I just don't go to those. Like if I get pizza, I go to the Bronx or Il Lazzarone.
Well, that's exactly where we should go.
Yeah.
Totally different level. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
If I
spin
wasn't on
pizza.
deadline and just not lazy,
right,
would have been Minsky's. I mean,
Yeah.
Minsky's also
This
very
is
good.
pretty good.
I will get because it's just right next to my new apartment. So if I get delivery, I get spin pizza. It is.
I've had it like a time or two.
Very
It
good.
was very
I
good.
very much like. It's also like the perfect like portion. And it comes with like a really good salad. Like it's spin pizza is a really good place.
I would just take any pizza over Pizza Hut.
There's no like bad
Totino's
pizza.
Totino's pizza. That would be ahead of Pizza Hut.
I'm just thinking about Il Lazzarone right now and how like it didn't even cross my mind yesterday
You were in
that I was
St.
in
Joe.
St. Joe and I ate the food in the media room and
it was free. That's understandable.
it was free and the brownies were good. And that'll be the end of my public evaluation of how how lunch was yesterday. It's the first couple days of camp for everybody. And I very much appreciate everybody there who gives us free food.
I
Love
took
that.
2 brownies home today. Those were fantastic.
I took a brownie home for the drive back yesterday for a little as a treat.
You see a little driving brownie. I get it.
But I could have left the media
Il
room and
Lazzarone,
gone to
man.
Il Lazzarone yesterday.
That place is.
What is wrong with me?
It's special.
It really is.
Yeah, if you're able to hook me up with a Lazzarone, I mean, I'm always there with you in St. Joe.
It's
It
really is the best pizza like I've ever had. Like it's
perfect.
It's outstanding.
Yeah, I am honestly thinking right now about if we could just replay the last hour and a half of the show, that I could drive to Il Lazzarone, bring some pizzas back.
I have one big complaint with Il Lazzarone, and it's just that there's not one in Johnson
your
County.
backyard.
I just want one down here somewhere.
Yes.
Because like the closest one's the River Market.
And
I
that
love
one
Il
is closed on
Lazzarone,
Monday and Tuesday
but
as
I'm
well.
not going to the River Market for pizza. Lazy.
Destroy some Il Lazzarone right now.
That's why I go with Spin Pizza because it's like the closest thing. And Spin's very good. It's just nowhere near Il Lazzarone.
Yeah. All right, well, Matt, go enjoy your Papa John's pizza, and thank you for making some time for us here tonight, even though apparently you've had enough time to have 2 bites of pizza in your last hour and a half. I'm sorry for only making that more painful for you.
There are many things that these are the sacrifices I do for you, Josh.
Yes.
I just want you to know that's how much you mean to me, that I'm willing to make those sacrifices for you.
It's remarkable. Being willing to sacrifice pizza for me is something that really, frankly, I'm not sure I found anywhere in my life. So thank you, Matt. I'm gonna tear up during the break here as I dwell on that thought a little more deeply.
Well, if you tear up, it still will not. I mean, whatever you got there, it will not be as greasy as a Pizza Hut pizza.
But you know what? Papa John's pizza is too wet. I'll say it. It's a wet pizza. Added by my tears, I guess.
I do like their garlic sauce.
I can't do the garlic dippings. It's just a
Normally
lot of
I don't,
grease.
but Papa John's is very good. I like theirs.
Matt, hang up on us, Matt. You don't need to be here anymore. Thank you for your service and for your sacrifices.
Take care, everybody.
Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. He gave up pizza to talk to us today.
So when I was, I remember it was my first year in Lexington. I was given a card. I can't remember exactly where I got it from, but it was one of those like I guess reward cards, whatever. It has all these like coupons essentially on the card itself.
Sorry, where was this for again?
Oh, this is when I was living in Lexington, and so one of the deals.
Okay, I'm sorry. Which pizza place are you talking about?
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Oh,
so
sorry,
one
okay.
of the
explains
deals.
why I missed that detail.
Yes, one of the deals on there was a buy one get one free from Papa John's. So my first year in Kentucky, I ate a lot of Papa John's, and that was probably because hey, buy one get one free.
It's a good deal,
and it was a large pizza. You're getting 2 large pizzas for the price of one.
That's at least 3 days of food.
I ate a lot of Papa John's my first year at Kentucky, and I that was probably the last time I ate pizza from like the major like food chains. And then when I came back here, it was just like the Bronx is very good, and then El Azarone's great. And I really like Spin. Spin pizza is I've never been to Spin, and Nate took me when I was towards the end of my my shift filling in on the Border Patrol. To say thank you. Shift.
He said
on the Border Patrol to say, thank you for everything. And it's a very good place.
Wow.
I like Spin Pizza a lot. I had never been. I'm very impressed with it.
I filled in on the Border Patrol one day a little while back, and Nate actually ordered Papa John's pizza and then just threw it in my face. Said, thanks for nothing.
Every time I hear Papa John's on now, I always want to just say, like, I associate the Papadilla as like its brand.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, it's not Papa John's, it's Papadilla now. Like
I associate 4 things with Papa John's. Not necessarily in this order. The Papadilla.
Yep.
Their pizza is too wet. Shaq. And then, racism.
And Papa John himself.
And then Papa John.
Isn't Shaq with Domino's now, though?
No. How dare you?
Sure.
I saw him in a commercial recently.
Shaq is literally
he owns a bunch of pizza.
He does own a bunch. He does own a bunch of Papa John's, but Shaq is with everybody. Shaq is like
no. His new commercials with Papa John's. Beard's just smoking crack.
Shaq is in the wig.
Yeah, it's Papa John's commercial.
Is it okay?
Shaq is allowed. It's just him only who's allowed to he can be like a spokesperson for like different companies of the same brand. He's just allowed to be everywhere.
But it is Papa John's because for Papa John's essentially they're trying to phase out the other Papa and make Papa Shaq.
Papa Shaq, yeah. But he owns a bunch of Papa John's, which if you ever get money, like that's the investment.
Invest
not necessarily
in pizza.
Papa John's, but like
pizza.
Places like that, whether it essentially all the major fast food places / pizza places, right? Like get those.
Beards, that commercial is for their stuffed crust. Okay, pizza. I just watched it on YouTube, and now I Papa John's is third on my list. I think I really only ever order Domino's if I'm gonna do delivery pizza. I'll also say this: I'm a bit of a frozen pizza connoisseur at this point in my life, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Good.
Costco sells pepperoni pizzas like a stack of 4. Yeah, you had it because we had them during one of the finals games.
That was good.
It's one of the ones the Suns lost. I can't remember what it was. We had Renee put another one of them in the oven a couple days ago, and like it really jarred to me. Like it is fully covered in pepperoni. Mm-hmm. It's really good, and the Walmart brand stuffed crust pizza is pretty good. So the more you know. If we ever get independently wealthy, do you think we could get them to build an Il Lazzarone just like in your literal backyard?
If I had the money, I would
like the Watts do.
Yeah, I would pay for all that. I would pay
like
for.
What?
I'd be like,
what did you say, Beards?
There's the like Subway commercial I think with JJ Watt.
Yeah.
I would pay Josh, not you, Josh, but the owner of
Josh
Josh, to build an El Lazaron in my backyard. Absolutely.
So, Josh, do you remember that one time?
I would only eat that. I would eat breakfast. They have the dessert ones. I could eat those for breakfast. You know, three meals.
There's some fruit on there.
God, I would if what's the I cannot remember what the main one is called, like the iconic El Lazaron pizza. That's got the like balsamic vinegar on it.
The crepa?
The crepa. God, if you put 14 crepas in front of me right now, they'd be gone by the commercial break. Yes, Beards, you were saying.
Do you remember the time down on our 15-10 days when we ordered a pizza on air basically and planned everything out?
We didn't call it. We
didn't call it.
We did it on the online. We had a conversation.
I'm almost at the point where I think we should do it again.
Because pizza's gonna show up if we order it, and I don't think I really want to do this that bad. I got a Costco frozen pizza at home with my name on it, but I think if we order pizza now and it gets here and it's not El Lazaron, I'm gonna be a little.
I already had dinner. I'm full.
I don't think Papakino's does delivery, but I wish they did.
Training camp coverage here on Sports Radio 810 is not brought to you by any pizza places as of right now, but it is brought to you by 3 other great partners of ours that we're very appreciative of. And yeah, if you want to slap a pizza company on Almost Entirely Sports, you let us know. Tell you what, this whole segment it could be if you are a pizza company that either was not mentioned in this segment or was not mentioned where you wanted to be mentioned in this segment, come slap your logo on Almost Entirely Sports and bring us free pizza. And I promise, you know the best pizza in the world.
Free pizza.
Free
the
pizza.
Next one.
Beards is the Tom Brady of pizza. Our training camp coverage is actually brought to you by D. Pasquale Moore Injury Attorneys. Mike D. Pasquale and the law offices of D. Pasquale Moore are there for you if you or a loved one has been hurt in a car wreck. Remember, Mike's got this. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Also brought to you by Bud Light, which pairs really well with the pizza. In fact, here's a Bud Light little off ramp because we're all about foods and drinks and sponsors the rest of the segment.
Oh yeah.
Whenever Scott Jason came over for one of the aforementioned Suns games, he's apparently a Bud Light guy, and I have of course indulged in God's drink, as I call it,
God's
nectar being Bud Light, but I wasn't like I was never in a headspace of like gotta make sure there's Bud Light in the fridge all the time. If it shows up, it's wonderful fun. But having it specifically out of the glass bottles, which I don't know if I had ever had actually, that Scott brought over, I found out that it goes pretty hard actually.
Yeah.
I was very pleased.
Beer out of glass essentially.
Yeah.
It can be a bottle or
well,
a mason.
I've never had beer other than Bud Light in my life.
True. Or it could be
and neither of you.
My point
neither
being,
has beards.
it can be in a mason jar. You go with the bottle. It's gotta be glass. It's something
that
about
makes
the
sense.
glass.
Because I've gotten it on
with
tap
the Bud
before,
Light,
and it's great.
It's just different.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Get it in the can if you want. Pour it into a glass.
It's plenty good. It's just something about I don't know what it is about the glass. Just the glass just makes it different.
I really do enjoy Bud Light. Hold on. What a crazy coincidence. Chiefs training camp coverage on Sports Radio 810 is presented by Bud Light, the official beer of your Kansas City Chiefs. Also brought to you by our friends at CBD American Shaman. Over 40 local locations. Come in for a free sample today. CBD American Shaman. Life is better with the feather. Let's take a break. Whenever we come back, we'll see if we order pizza during the break.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Best, like fast food delivery pizza chain. Beards.
Fast food delivery pizza. I usually just go with Pizza Hut.
That's usually what I go with, too.
Guys, the answer's Domino's. You guys both.
Domino's is good. Domino's is better than East.
Domino's just stepped it up, though.
Yeah, they got that garlicky crust.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's good stuff.
God, I love this sports show.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, so over the course of the break, it sounds like Beards has decided that he's going to get pizza on his way home.
Is that what he gets like
Definitely
most nights
thinking
on your way
about it.
home?
No, usually I just go home and make a sandwich or something.
I don't know about that.
Here's something I almost tweeted earlier today and will mention now. Sandwiches are good.
Yeah, they are.
And I think the specific thing, and tell me where you guys land on this. I actually think I have a guess. I think I know where both of you guys are going to be. But typically, in terms of whatever I'm making, so I am very frequently essentially making a sandwich in a tortilla and then toasting a little bit in a skillet, and it's just a wrap at that point, obviously. But in our last round of groceries, where I just got some like normal, just like plain wheat bread from Walmart or whatever. And whenever I have sliced bread, I am toasting it 90 to 95% of the time.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Did not think that you were going to be a big toast guy.
Oh,
Beards.
I got a cast iron skillet. It's like the perfect little sandwich size.
Oh, and so
that thing gets so much use.
That's okay. Good.
So much use. That thing is excellent.
I would say that if you're doing it in a skillet, you're probably making a melt at that point. I guess there has to be cheese on it, right? You're putting cheese in your stuff, right?
Yes.
Beards? Okay.
Pepper jack cheese.
So I will either, depending on what type of bread it is or how old the bread is, I'll either put the full thing in the toaster and just let the bread become toast and then make the sandwich in the toast. Or I'll do the melt thing that Beards is describing. But today, because this is brand stinking new fresh bread, it was so soft. And I put a slice of pickle in it to get the crunch and just a little turkey sandwich. Here's the other secret. Whenever you go to Good Sense, at least for me, like their standard dress ends with a little salt, pepper, their Italian seasoning, or just oregano, but whatever you've got. And then red wine vinegar and some form of oil. I've started getting that from sandwich places more regularly, but you can also just do that at home. I typically don't also get the salt because you're talking about like cold cuts, usually pretty salty already. But just a little crack of black pepper, a little bit of Italian seasoning, a little drizzle of red wine vinegar, a little drizzle of olive oil. And then if you even want to add another sauce, you still can. The soft bread is, I think I'm going to make that a larger part of my sort of day-to-day existence for a little while because it came through very clutch today.
You need to try the Sara Lee artisan bread. It
I feel like you've talked about this before.
It might be the best bread I've ever had because it's very soft but firm. Like you don't have to worry. Like it's not falling apart. But it's every time I touch it or bite into it, I feel like I'm biting into a cloud. Like I imagine this is what a cloud would taste like essentially. Like I imagine that the artisan bread is just a cloud.
Really quick, Beards, can you please pull up the Josh Reads the Internet music? I'm not reading the internet. I just would like that lullaby sort of music really quick. And then, Rudy, after that music is ready, I would like for you to walk us through your process of making and eating a beautiful Salazar sandwich on Sara Lee artisanal bread.
So I would say...
Whoa. Meet the tone. Come back down here.
So I would say most of the time, in part because of the inexpensive nature, is PB&J is like 90% of what I eat for sandwiches.
A classic.
So, one, PB&J lasts forever. Also, it's very good.
What type of jelly typically do you use?
So I'm a strawberry jelly guy.
I like strawberry jelly.
I'm a crunchy peanut butter guy.
Look at you.
I like the crunch.
Especially if you're doing that soft bread, you need that crunch to come from somewhere.
I like the crunch.
So I think Rudy and I are both crunchy peanut butter, strawberry jelly people. Beards, what about you?
I like ham and cheese sandwiches.
But if you had to have
There's no way he might like peanut butter. There's no way he likes jelly.
I would have gone the other way around. I would say there's no way he likes peanut butter, but maybe you would eat some jelly.
I'm not a peanut butter person.
Are you a jelly person? It's fruit though.
Not
so
necessarily.
He doesn't like fruit.
Okay, but if you were gonna have to, if I was said, hey, here's a jelly sandwich, and if you don't eat it, you'll die. What flavor of jelly would you pick?
I don't know.
Beards, you could have said
does not-
literally
He does not
anything
like.
there.
He does not like fruit.
What? Back to Rudy. So peanut butter and jelly,
Yeah,
the
it's
staple.
It's
The
a
staple.
I will say when I go, if I'm making like I'm the type of person, I'll mix it up. I'll usually have like a little, because I'll buy turkey and ham. I'll usually on the sandwich I'll have like a piece of turkey and a piece of ham.
Ooh, you like to mix it
a little
up?
bit.
Ooh, wow.
But I'm the type, I'll put it on the George Foreman grill and make a panini.
A panini is great.
Yeah, so I'll put it on the Foreman grill, fry that bad boy for 5 minutes.
And I think that's the thing about bread. Like, 'cause Renee and I have an air fryer that we've been using quite a lot for however last year we've had it or whatever. And if you want to get everything really melty inside the sandwich, you can put the whole sandwich in the air fryer. Now, it does sort of dehydrate the bread in a way where you're like 2 minutes, if you pull it out at the right time, you're like 3 minutes away from croutons. So you got to be careful. But it's just a different type of texture. If you've got a sauce you want to dip it in or something, you can go that way. You can go panini press. You can put it in the skillet and flip it over. That's my usual method. You can throw the bread straight into the toaster. You can just have cold bread. Even as it gets, look, clearly fresh bread, I think, if you're going to have it non-toasted is the best time. But if it gets a little old, put it in the toaster. And it's going to freshen right back up again.
Also, weirdly, if I go with like the ham and turkey,
yeah,
I like to put hot sauce on it.
Is there a particular type of hot sauce you go for?
I'm on a Cholula kick right now.
Really? Interesting. I think of that as being a much more sort of Hispanic little pot, but that could be good on a sandwich.
Yeah, it's kind of the kick I'm on.
What kind? So if you're gonna do your turkey and ham sandwich, walk me through the rest of the ingredients there. You got the artisanal. It's the Sara Lee's website says artisanal.
Yeah,
There's an O at the end.
yes.
Just okay.
Yes, it is. It's honestly it's the best bread I've ever had.
Not a sponsor, but you got that bread.
It's so good.
Your little turkey, little ham.
Yep.
It's going into a panini eventually. But what else is going? Is there some cheese? Any other toppings?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put any kind of cheese on it, but I normally I'm just getting American cheddar because you get more of it.
Oh, interesting.
And
orange cheese.
You can just get more of it.
Yeah. Orange cheddar or white cheddar? Orange cheddar, probably.
Orange, yeah. Again, mostly it's cheaper.
Sure.
If I'm being a little,
no judgments here, except
if
for
I'm being
beards.
a little fancy, I go with pepper jack because I love pepper jack cheese.
Pepper jack cheese is great. It's nice to have something culinarily that all of us are on the same page on, which is pepper jack cheese rips
My only
ass.
problem with
Excuse
pepper
me,
jack cheese
rips butt. This is a
that
safe segment.
Anytime I find it, it's there's 10 to 12 because it's a fancier cheese. I get it. I can't get just like 50 of them I can't get 50 little slices all packed together in one little square.
Are you getting individually wrapped Kraft cheese typically for these sandwiches, or are you getting?
So I mean,
No judgment zone.
If I'm going with the orange, it's just like your standard Crafts, just
Yeah, the
that little
individually
square.
wrapped
Yeah,
squares.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
interesting. Got it.
And then if it's the pepper jack, it's like they're all in the same one, separated by the little thin, I guess, paper.
Absolutely. That's what I have in the fridge right now. That is the go-to for me. I'll encourage you again, season it as if you were seasoning another food. Is the music about to end there, Beards? Okay, I was going to say I was going to throw a break here pretty soon, but I wanted to just you can still keep your voice down.
Okay, that's fine.
Dun, dun, dun. That is the one thing.
This is when you see it coming to an end. You started in like cart 3 or 2.
Well, there is no
and
cart
that way
3 or
you can
2.
just there is. There's 3 carts. There's cart 1, 2, and 3.
Kind of.
I did
I mean,
that.
they're named 1, 2, and 3.
I did that for Josh. Whenever Josh would go long on Josh Reads the Internet, I would
Yeah.
start it up again about maybe with a minute left of the music, so it got past all the curses spot. So when the music was done, I just transitioned to the next one.
It feels like by now there definitely should be more music playing also. It feels like you weren't.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted more music.
I know there's
the
a
way you didn't sound like.
We're still down here talking about sandwiches. It's sandwich music, not reading the
Tell me
internet
there wasn't
music.
a cart 1, 2, and 3. Like I don't run the board all the time.
That was a bit much, Beard. No, we're not investigating sandwiches. I don't want to bring out my gumshoes voice. Listen here, gumshoes. The best thing you can do for your day-to-day sandwich and salad making life goes for both of them. Season them like you would for any other food you're about to eat. There's no reason to let that go unseasoned into your body. Voice is changing. Oh no. Turn it into Bill Clinton. All voices eventually end up being Bill Clinton. You really ruined this segment, Beards. We had such a nice thing going, and you came in and just took a big fat dump on it.
Take the show with you wherever you go. Listen live on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app and 810WHB.com. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Landon, click on the microphone. Get up here, Landon. What do you get at Good Sense? Go.
Ham, cheese, nothing on it.
Stop it! Stop it!
Coconut ice.
Stop it! I can't.
Joke's on you, Landon. They have Pepsi.
I can't.
I know better. I do it.
That's
do the trick.
That's how you get one. Which one is the fake beards and which one is the real beards? You get one question, and it's what do you get at Good Sense?
I know which stores have Pepsi and which don't.
And he also didn't ask for 2 chocolate chip cookies.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Just a minute before we talk to Craig Stout of KC Sports Network coming up next segment. In the meantime, let me tell you about the 810 Listener Golf Tournament. It's just around the corner, and you can sign up for it. It's at 810WHB.com. The information you need, the sign up, everything is all there. Here's the quick sell, though. Tickets are $108.10 per player, including golf, the cart, a welcome bag, drink tickets, breakfast, and lunch. It's at Fred Arbana's Golf Course in KC Mo. $108.10 if you want to sign up for the 810 Listener Golf Tournament. It is on 810. That's August 10th. So just around the corner. 2 weeks away. 810, $108.10 per player. 810WHB.com for more information if you would like to sign up to be a part of the 810 Listener Golf Tournament. I imagine we'll be out there at some point. I don't know. Want more information? 810WHB.com. That's the secret. Everything is at the website. Craig Stout of KCSN is next.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
ESPN's Adam Schefter reported this afternoon Green Bay Packers now offering concessions in an attempt to convince Aaron Rodgers to return to the team for at least one more season. Might be working. Packers president Mark Murphy did speak with the media earlier today after shareholders met in their annual State of the Union at Lambeau Field.
I think fans are frustrated with the situation. I think they kind of pox on both houses, us and Aaron, but we've been in constant communication. It's obviously months, and I'm hopeful that we'll have it all resolved. I do think our fans are split, and I think there's a lot of them that are just, they want it resolved, and I don't know if they're against the Packers or against Aaron. They want to see it resolved, and I know people know how good a player Aaron is.
Concessions would include voiding the final year of Rodgers' deal. Team would also agree to review Rodgers' situation at the end of the upcoming season. Washington football team agreeing to a 4-year extension with defensive end Jonathan Allen. Extension for Allen worth $72 million, includes a $30 million signing bonus. NBA draft Thursday from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reporting Memphis Grizzlies finalizing a trade that will send Jonas Valanciunas to the Pelicans. Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, the number 10 overall pick and the number 40 pick in this week's draft would go to Memphis for Valanciunas. The number 17 pick and the number 51 pick in the second round of this year's draft as well.
Hey, it's Greeny and Water Week, the very latest on Aaron Rodgers, the very latest on the baseball trade deadline, and leading up to the NBA draft. Don't miss a minute, Tuesday, with me, Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
That was the training camp heroin. Every once in a while, I would just tweet like needle emojis and, hashtag training camp heroin, because that's what we're living for right now.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Let's talk about the defense some, and also probably other stuff. I don't want to pigeonhole Craig Stout. He's of KC Sports Network. You can check out the Substack at kcsn.substack.com, kcsportsnetwork.com. Follow him on Twitter at BarleyHop. I don't know how many other outlets there need to be, but that covers at least the grand majority of them. Craig, what if we just talked only offense for the next 25 minutes?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I think that people would probably enjoy that based on my interactions with folks. They don't seem to be so much about the defense as I certainly am, but I'm open to whatever you want to do.
What is it that made you like the defense guy? Was there a point as a fan or something that where you just fell in love with the defensive side of the ball?
I mean, my grandfather was a defensive backs coach when I was growing up, so I kind of grew up around the secondary and all of that. And when the Chiefs actually made their switch back when Todd Haley and Scott Pioli came in to the 3-4 under Clancy Pendergast, a lot of people had questions. Yeah, a lot of people had questions. So I kind of went through and explained some of the 3-4 as the best that I knew it, and it kind of went from there. It stuck.
I haven't thought about Clancy Pendergast in an unbelievably long time. And I probably won't think about him again for another many, many years if all things go well.
I wish that I didn't have as much knowledge in my head about Clancy Pendergast as I currently do. It's occupying valuable brain space right now.
I'm going to see if I can figure out where he's at the moment, because that is very exciting to me. Tell me one thing about Clancy Pendergast's defense that you remember very well to this day.
I remember he was one of the early guys to start adopting some hybrid looks. He did play a 3-4 mainly in Kansas City, but he did kind of shift to some 4-3 looks, and he kind of did that a little bit before he came. He was one of the early adopters of some of these multiple schemes. Obviously, everybody knows Belichick definitely has been doing that forever, but he really tried to adopt that, albeit with a little bit less talent. Didn't work so hot, and then the Chiefs went after Romeo Crennel in that next offseason and ran a true two-gapping 3-4 after that. But, yeah, I just remember how radical of a thought that was to have somebody that kind of played both defenses.
He was fired as USC's defensive coordinator after the 2019 season. He is on Twitter at Coach Pendergast, and would you like to take a stab at how many Twitter followers he has?
Oh, you know what? That man deserves at least 30,000 followers, but I'm guessing it's probably closer to 10.
He has a little over 5,000 Twitter followers, which means that both of us have more than double his Twitter followers.
A travesty, an absolute travesty.
Do you want to...
Justice for Clancy. Justice for Clancy.
Justice for Clancy.
Do you want to know a fun fact about him?
I would love nothing more.
So he graduated from the University of Arizona in 1990. He did not play football in college, but he did coach his fraternity team. So that's where it all started. He coached his fraternity team's intramural football team.
That's where it all began?
That's where it all began.
Man, he was ahead of his time.
He really was.
Man,
he just knew. He knew what he wanted.
He's also not as old as I thought he was. I think it said he's 53 right now
53,
or something.
Yeah.
I feel like
he's much younger than I thought he was too.
Yeah. I would have had him being 53 in Kansas City probably. He's got some gas left in the tank. Somebody give Clancy a job.
If you have an intramural football season coming up and need a coach, he's got experience.
Think about it this way. Clancy Pendergast is currently the youngest of the last 4 defensive coordinators for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow. Yeah, also a good call. All right, yeah, so this is, look, we got to the bottom of where it started for you, and now we're at a point where we're going to try to get Clancy Pendergast employed again. I feel like that's a noble a noble thing for all of us to be searching for. I kind of want our main thing that we talk about here to be some more on the Chris Jones front, because we talked right after, or kind of right between the publishing of Chris Jones as a run defender at defensive end last year, and then you looking at his pass rushing snaps. So I want to dig into all of that in a second. But there are a couple kind of quicker things as we start training camp. I mean, the veterans all reported today, and it really gets going in earnest in about 12 hours from now. Is there anybody or anything in particular that you are especially just cannot wait to see somebody hit the field in hopes of learning something about anybody on that defensive side?
I mean, it's really coming down to two candidates here. It's Chris Jones, first of all, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But in the secondary, I want to see how this slot cornerback kind of competition's going. Mike Hughes, Devin Key, is L'Jarius Sneed going to kick in there if DeAndre Baker's healthy enough to crack basically the top 5 defensive backs on this team? Because Spagnuolo was going to play the best 5. That's how he's always operated. That's why you've seen Tyrann Mathieu in the slot sometimes, because Juan Thornhill and Dan Sorensen were 2 of those best 5. So it just kind of depends on what that is. I am glued to that slot cornerback role because I think that's going to tell us a lot about what Spagnuolo thinks of his defense and thinks of these young guys. I think that might dissuade some of these people from jumping off a roof immediately, basically, about the quarterback position if you see some of those guys getting some early run with the ones in camp.
You don't have to say some people. You can just say me. You can call me. You can call me out.
I'm just brushing with broad strokes here.
Yes.
I don't want to single anybody out.
What's the best case scenario? If you said, oh boy, if these 5 guys prove to be the best 5 guys, this would be the best case for the Chiefs.
I mean, I think that, obviously Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill on the back end, L'Jarius Sneed and Charvarius Ward are going to be the other 2. So if those are 4, and you've got a guy like Mike Hughes or Devin Key that's outplaying a guy like Dan Sorensen that Steve Spagnuolo implicitly trusts, he knows the defense ridiculously well. That means that Dan Sorensen is going to be relegated to the dime, and he's not going to be playing as much in the nickel. That means that one of those younger guys, Hughes, Key, whoever it is grasping the concepts quickly, and they want to get that better athlete, that better guy on the field to try and get him to grow a little bit quicker and relegate Sorensen to special teams and the dime. And, I mean, honestly, I think that that's an okay thing. But it's nice to have that insurance of Sorensen there. If you see those guys taking reps away from Dan Sorensen, that speaks volumes.
I might be part of the problem on Sorensen, but there is something funny that happens whenever a guy is just forced to play one slot above where he should be. Whenever he ends up having to play more of the reps you'd like to see go to Juan Thornhill. Dan Sorensen's the worst football player in the history of the sport. But whenever he's just sort of your dime defensive back that comes in the dime package, I think that he's really valuable in that spot. It's funny how the expectation and usage changes how we look at players so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, Dan Sorensen as your 6th best defensive back is better than most teams' 6th defensive back. I mean, he's a good player. He in the right system, he's able to maximize and do well. He's in the right spot at all times. I mean, that's what you want out of that 6th guy. Typically, you're bringing in a young guy who might get picked on a little bit more. Dan Sorensen's that guy for your number 6. Even as your number 5, you're not in a bad situation, but as number 6, you're in a great situation.
You mentioned Thornhill obviously being a super important part for the back end. And he's kind of been our through line throughout the show so far tonight because he talked yesterday when I was out there. And I really like Juan Thornhill. And we talked about him a lot over the course of last season as kind of mid-season his role really severely decreased. And he talked yesterday about how he was never 100% healthy. And, he wasn't a year removed from his ACL tear until week 17 when he actually played all of the snaps in that game that did not matter for seeding, which was kind of interesting. But that whole, his whole arc of the season makes a lot more sense when you take into account the physical and mental side of his rehab, which he's talked a lot about. And he also kind of talked about, developing into the leadership role a little bit, especially whenever he's been surrounded by younger guys and when Matthew hasn't been out there as he wasn't, for those first couple days of just the rookies and the quarterbacks and the injured guys reporting. So can you take a 30,000-foot view of Thornhill for a second? Kind of the guy we saw really coming into the spotlight in his rookie season, and then the guy that we saw coming back from the injury, and the guy that you hope we see in 2021?
Yeah, absolutely. As a rookie, arguably the team's best single high guy, the best deep safety that this team had, and allowed Tyrann Mathieu to play that slot role that we saw in 2019, and he played it at almost a Defensive Player of the Year level. He was able to erase everything kind of over the top and on the back end and help limit a bunch of explosive plays. Obviously, that injury sapped him of a bunch of that athleticism early on last season, and so you saw the team kind of get him out there, and they wanted, I'm sure from a mental perspective or, whatever the case may be, wanted him out there because he's a very valuable piece to this defense going forward. But as you said, middle of the season, all of a sudden Dan Sorensen's getting some of the base down reps. He's getting the nickel reps ahead of Juan Thornhill. You're not seeing Thornhill quite as much as he was trying to recover from that injury. But yeah, like you said, they got to week 17. All of a sudden, he's playing 100% of the snaps. His best game of the season was that Buffalo Bills AFC Championship game. He was absolutely terrific. He looked like the player that we'd seen the year before, albeit even a little bit smarter, a little bit better position and all that stuff. So that's where my baseline is. I want that Juan Thornhill in week 1, and I think we're going to get it because I think he understands what's expected of him in year 3. I think he understands that he can trust his lower body to move the way that he wants it to. He's going to look a little more explosive than we even got to see him, even in that AFC Championship game last year. And I think all of a sudden we're going to be talking maybe week 5, week 6, week 7 about how Juan Thornhill might have to be one of these guys that we lock up after next year. I just think that he's ready to take that next step. And him talking about the mental side of dealing with that injury and being the leader, I think tells you a lot about where he is in his preparation for the game. So I think the Chiefs are going to maybe make him a priority. Get on that because I think he's going to have a good season next season. And if that's the case, you want to get him locked up before he has the great season the next season and really costs a lot of money.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's funny, we've seen these guys were later in their careers by a little bit, but like Eric Berry's contract came after the perfect season, after the exceptional one. And Tyrann Mathieu obviously comes here in free agency. And I hope that, assuming we do get that version of Thornhill this year, that you get the confidence that he gets back to physically where he was as a rookie, but mentally where he's going to be after 3 years of playing with Mathieu and Spags and trying to get him to that place. So I like that a lot. All right, let's talk about Chris Jones then. I feel good about what we've done in the secondary here. I've moved back from the ledge that I was on. And you've got the film review up on KCSN right now, kcsn.substack.com. You can sign up there. This is back there for subscribers. It's no reason not to subscribe to everything that KC Sports Network is doing. Still here in its infancy, but an incredible start for everything you guys are doing over there. And so you took a look at Chris Jones as the pass rusher from the defensive end position. If you could sort of recalibrate us for where you started from, you're just looking at where he was in 2020 as a pass rusher on the edge. What was your sample size like here compared to your run-stopping sample size, which was like 3 snaps or something?
It was 4 snaps.
It was 4. Okay.
Don't short the man. Don't short the man by 25% there.
I apologize.
This was closer to like 30 to 35 to 40 snaps rushing the passer. So enough of a sample size where you got to kind of see him have some setup for his pass rush moves, particularly in a few games where he got to rush off the edge multiple times. It wasn't just, one here, one here. You got to see him do it 3 or 4 times and set up a tackle with his rush moves. And honestly, I feel a lot better having gone back to rewatch all of these defensive end snaps than I did before. I kind of felt pretty good about his run defense, but him moving off the edge, he's just a bigger guy, and he's a higher cut guy. It is what it is, but I really liked what he did with his hands. Very good hand technique, was able to pass a lot of these pretty good tackles fairly effortlessly. Now, he doesn't have that elite burst. He doesn't have that speed up the arc to really press the tackle, but he counter-moved really well as tackles tried to set against his bull rush, which was by far his most effective, which should surprise nobody watching Chris Jones play football. He was able to collapse the pocket through the tackle. He was able to work inside off of that, and he was able to work outside off of that. You got to see a varied rush plan. Now, again, I wouldn't say that Chris Jones is going to go out there and have 11 or 12 sacks off the edge. I definitely wouldn't predict something to that effect, but he is an above-average rusher from the defensive end position at the NFL level. So if you're getting that on early downs, it's not going to be as much of a liability as maybe some people think with him coming off the edge there. And then obviously you kick him inside on third down, or second and long, and you get to tee off knowing that you've got that elite pass rusher still. So I was very impressed. I was very comfortable with what he was doing there, especially when you think about the fact that he's going to get another year in the system to do these sorts of things and to work off of the edge.
Does that make the trade-off worth it in your mind? Because he's an elite interior pass rusher, but an above-average one on the edge in those early down situations. Does that math end up checking out for you?
I think it's going to come down to run defense for that. I really do. I think he has the potential with that length, with that strength, to set a really hard edge on the outside, which will help make up for some of the lack of range on the second level from those linebackers. Obviously, Willie Gay is going to be able to run like, nobody's business, but those other guys may not have to chase all the way to the edge. If he can do that, I think improving in that run defense at such a significant clip there on the edge will make up for that. I think that math does work because you get into those second and longs a little earlier. You get him out there on first down, and it's a negative play or a stop for no gain. Now all of a sudden you get to kick him inside sooner, and you get to tee off against the pass. So I do think that it can be worth it, but regardless of what anybody thinks about the run and all of that, the NFL still does run plenty. So if you're able to do that and win on early downs, I do think that makes the math worth it.
I want to talk a little more about something that you mentioned there and then also something that you wrote about because I love the word bendy. But like you said, he doesn't have the speed to get around a tackle, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just thinking about a few particular rushers, but it seems to me like the NFL standard at this point is having the speed. Maybe this is top end guys, I don't know. But I think of the elite edge rushers as being guys with the speed that can go around the edge, that are particularly bendy, that can get to the top of the arc, and then maybe even their off-speed thing is to try to play with power or to try to make a lineman try to cheat up a little bit and then cut back inside. But if that outside part is not really a part of Chris Jones's game, if they are, dropping back to pass on 1st and 10, how do you feel about him getting there if he only kind of has the one dominant trait as an edge rusher?
Well, I actually feel, and that's going back and rewatching those actually made me feel a little bit better because tackles would try and step quick on him and anchor against the bull rush. And against most of these guys, Spagnuolo has had a history of them, and I've watched more Spagnuolo edge rushers than I would care to even think about at this point. So, most of these Spagnuolo edge rushers, when you get people that sit on that bull rush, it takes them a little while to transition to another move and to force the tackle off balance. Chris Jones is very quick at that because he's used to being, in close proximity to these guards and centers. So on those 1st and 10s, when these guys drop back to pass, if you've got a tackle that's regularly setting against a bull rush, Chris Jones was able to get past the tackle. Now, quickly with that, but not necessarily in the quarterback's lap as quickly as, like, say, a Nick Bosa or, a Von Miller or somebody like that is going to be able to. But it was still much better than I thought it was going to be. So it actually was a situation where it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't for a tackle, because if you don't set like that, he's going to bull rush into the quarterback's lap. Right. But if you do, there might be a pressure there. So I do think that he has the potential to do that still off the outside.
It also makes me feel a little bit better. It's genuinely incredibly interesting as an off-season story of one of the best players on the team. Kind of, again, changing positions is probably a tiny bit strong, but we've heard a lot of terminology that sounds like a very legit move to the edge for Chris Jones. So obviously we've covered all of that. One other thing that you get at in the story that made me excited about this as opposed to just sort of curious is just what you can do whenever you have a tackle that specifically struggles with a power rusher, or if you can pick on some matchups that way. Whenever you're able to play the matchups, it feels like Chris Jones at the edge could be incredibly destructive.
Yes, and I think that Spagnuolo has made sure to reiterate that as much as possible, because I think that there are a bunch of people with a healthy dose of skepticism about this move, and understandably so. So we do get into those situations where we start thinking of things as, a 1 or a 0. Like Chris Jones is always going to play on the defensive end position and never inside and all that. Spagnuolo made sure to mention we will see games where there might be a matchup favorability for him on the inside. You go up against a big tackle that can handle power really well. Let's say an Orlando Brown off of the edge. Orlando Brown versus Chris Jones, Orlando Brown is going to be able to handle a lot of what Chris Jones can throw at him. And that's not a bad thing by any means, but it is something where you might want to shift him inside. Get him a matchup, not necessarily against Joe Tooney, but maybe get him a matchup against a Trey Smith or a Kyle Long or somebody like that, where you can try and take advantage of a weak spot of the offensive line. And because they had that flexibility, especially with Alex Okafor in the mix now as a 3-down guy that can actually start on the outside, you can get some of these situations where Chris Jones can play more defensive tackle in a game that it might make more sense to rush him from the inside, whereas you get him matched up against a guy that struggles with power. Let's, throw out a name here, not to really call anybody out, but let's call him Alejandro Villanueva.
Sure. Just like a random name, like a name generator, like a Madden create a player,
Sure. But let's say a guy with that name happens to be on the outside against Chris Jones early in the season. Maybe you get that matchup there because you know that he can win with power and that guy struggles with it a little bit.
Just to come up with a random name. You took me right to the last thing I wanted to ask you about with Okafor being back, both the Chris Jones connection and then kind of Okafor individually can get to in a second. But Andy Reid has, without really being prompted, brought up Jaron Reed as a guy who can provide some extra flexibility by being there that can kick Chris Jones out, and you can have Reed in the middle. And it seems like Okafor would be a pretty logical extra addition when you're looking at that entire defensive line and say, hey, if you can throw Alex Okafor out there on 1st and 2nd down against maybe it's more of a power tackle or you've got a better matchup on the inside, the flexibility now feels like it would be a little easier to go either direction if the Chiefs wanted to. Do you buy that logic before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what Okafor brings?
Absolutely. I really do. I think that they've really built it up in a way that makes logical sense. It's not necessarily full of stars or anything like that. They obviously have a couple of guys that are top end, but there's enough good role players that can buy snaps. And I think that that's very important when the NFL is spending so much money on the defensive line. And if you're going to spend money on the defensive line, you got to find somebody that can buy snaps at an average or above average level. And I do believe that both of those guys are worth it. I mean, Andy Reid now just brings up Jaron Reed every press conference.
Pretty much.
Unprompted at this point. Yeah. I mean, find somebody who loves you as much as Andy Reid loves Jaron Reed.
I'm trying desperately. Am I going to get in trouble for that? We'll find out later.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. With what Okafor brings specifically, again, not a star role player, and I don't think we've gotten numbers. It just hit me that I don't think we've gotten numbers on Alex Okafor's contract yet. I'm gonna see if I can prove myself wrong while you talk here, Craig. But what does he bring? As you kind of went back and looked a little bit closer at his year last year, there were a couple numbers you found that were a little bit surprising to me. What can he and what can he not do? Obviously, with injuries being sort of the intangible extra thing that comes with the Alex Okafor question.
Yeah, Alex Okafor is probably the only true 3-down lineman, depending on how you want to view Chris Jones, that's on this team, except for Frank Clark. So Mike Dana, very good run defender, early down guy. Taco Charlton, good pass rusher, good productivity last year, mostly a passing down guy. And Josh Kando is, at this point, an unknown. So you need a guy that can cover if those guys go down, because now all of a sudden you've got a little bit more situational guys in a lot of positions. Alex Okafor can play on all 3 downs. He is a fairly good run defender. He certainly was a really good run defender in New Orleans, but it hasn't really shown its face as much in Kansas City. But he's able to rush the passer, and he beats up on bad tackles often. If he's going up against an elite guy, you're not really going to expect Alex Okafor to really win too terribly much, and it shows up and it reflects very often in his pressure rate. But when you get him opposite of Frank Clark, Chris Jones, and now Jaron Reed on the inside, you've got this guy on the outside. He's probably going to see single, one-on-one out against that tackle. And if it's a bad tackle or a tackle that's not really playing up to its standards, on that given day, Alex Okafor has the technique and ability off the edge to win enough and create enough problems. He was 4th on the team in pressure rates last year. Taco Charlton was number 1. Taco Charlton barely played rundowns, though. He's mostly a dime guy. And then it was Chris Jones and Frank Clark behind that. So Alex Okafor was the 4th guy on that team. So I do think that he has the ability to play all those downs. It's really good depth, especially for July. And that's what it is. It is depth. Make no mistake, he's not a starter. But it's really good depth in July, a guy that just made too much sense for the Chiefs to bring back at that point.
I'll let you go on this then. Kind of holistically now for the defensive line group, assuming that they don't add something more substantial than what they currently have, how would you feel about this being the unit that goes into the regular season?
It's okay. It really is. It's okay. I do worry about injury. Like you said with Alex Okafor, he gets injured a lot. And Frank Clark, past couple of seasons, has been, dealing with some nagging issues a little bit. So if both of those guys aren't really on the field or able to be on the field, now all of a sudden you got Chris Jones kicking out to a new position, Mike Dana, who's mostly a run defender, and Taco Charlton, and you're putting a lot on Josh Kando to develop quickly. So I don't love it, but at the same time, if those guys can stay mostly healthy, I do like the rotation, and I like the time that they bought with Kando, because if you get to the late season, where Alex Okafor has mostly been hurt, for the past couple of years, it's been late in the season, maybe Josh Kando's ready then. And maybe you can get a guy that can steal some of those snaps again and really grow as a rookie and get ready and see what you got, because you're going to need defensive ends next year.
Craig, you're the best. Appreciate you making some time tonight, and thank you for, again, walking me specifically off the ledge and everything else that you do to just really bring us all together as only you can.
Listen, I'm just here to unite. And if you want to unite with what I have, go to kcsn.substack.com, find Kansas City Sports Network on YouTube, subscribe to our podcast, do all of that stuff. We got Chiefs content, and we are about in the thick of it. I'm sure all of us, literally everyone that's listening right now, and Josh and I, Beards, and everybody involved is so excited that we finally have things, and we're not talking hypotheticals anymore. Got stuff to cover again.
KCSN.substack.com. Again, KCSportsNetwork.com. You can read the film review of Chris Jones's pass rush snaps from the edge last year. And Craig did say, whenever I asked if he'd come on tonight, he said, yes, but unless we get 50 subscribers right after the segment ends on the Substack, I'm never coming on the show again. So it's tough but fair, Craig.
Never, ever.
Well, we're going to do what we can.
Never, ever.
Look, man, if I have to just sign up 50 times on 50 different emails, that is a cost I'm willing to eat to make sure you keep coming on the show.
Okay. You're gonna run out of money if you keep having me on the show.
I just subscribed. I just subscribed with 2 fake accounts, and I'm now out of money. So yeah, this actually.
Okay.
Well, once again, my eyes were bigger than my stomach. Is that the phrase? I don't know. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Follow him on Twitter as well, at BarleyHop. He gave you all the KCSN plugs except for his own Twitter. Go follow him there, at BarleyHop on Twitter, KCSN.substack.com, KCSportsNetwork.com. All of the things, all of the places. Please do it, or he's going to abandon us.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
I have a lot of whips.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Trying to decide if I wanted to ask what the context of that was again.
Colin Cowherd.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I was thinking there was something else. That was my first thought.
I mean, I would assume it was Colin Cowherd, but
I think we might have been talking about whip in some other context that I can't. It doesn't matter. Thanks again to Craig Stout for joining us. KCSN@substack.com.
I could certainly be wrong.
That's never happened before.
Never.
Do you guys want to talk about something that we briefly texted about earlier today, where at least Rudy and I are very excited, and I'm guessing Beards is going to think it's fine?
A live-action Pokemon TV show will never come to Netflix. I've never been wrong.
So I want to talk about how there's a report here that Netflix is developing a live-action Pokemon series.
What?
Rudy's first L ever. But it's definitely a dub. You know what? You're taking 2 L's this segment, potentially. Take those 2 L's, flip them towards each other.
You got a dub.
Got a dub. Dub right there.
The dub.
So here's a little bit more information. This is from Variety. They have the first report. As the project is still in its early days, no details are available about the plot. Sources also say that the project, this is when I come around here, the project would be a live-action series akin to the Detective Pikachu film starring Ryan Reynolds and Justice Smith that was released in 2019. Sources say that Lucifer co-showrunner Joe Henderson, I don't know who that is, I've never seen Lucifer, is attached to write and executive produce.
You might like the show. It's an incredible show. It's very good. And Joe, and I obviously didn't know who Joe Henderson was, but like when I saw like he worked on Lucifer, it's like, oh, like Lucifer's a good show. So like I assume he'll do well. He also was on, he did the James Franco 11/22/63 on Hulu, based off a Stephen King book.
Oh, yeah.
That show was fantastic. So, like, most of the stuff he's done has been has been well. So, like, it seems like they got a really good person to help run this thing.
Also, they make the point that Netflix has all of the animated Pokemon stuff. They've been Netflix has been making a strong push into anime in recent years, having previously announced series based on Far Cry, the video game.
Yep.
What?
That's happening?
Yep.
Far Cry, Splinter Cell, Terminator.
They've done
Cowboy Bebop, One Piece, also coming.
They've done Dragon's Dogma, Castlevania. They're going to do Far Cry, and there's a bunch of other stuff as well.
I watched the first episode of the Dragon's Dogma thing, and I love the video game.
Okay, I thought it was a video game.
It is a video game. It's a weird as hell video game that I love to death, and it was one of the best blind purchases I've ever made ever. I watched the first episode of it and went, this is really weird, and I'm not sure I'm into it, and I just never watched the rest of it past then.
I watched
but the
whole
game
thing.
is excellent.
I never played the game. I've watched the whole Dragon's Dogma anime, and it was solid. But I'm not like I had never played the game, so I have no comparison. I know that I haven't seen any of Castlevania, just but from everything I've heard, it's one of the best things Netflix has done. Like it's one of their most watched shows. I guess I haven't seen any of it yet though, but they say it's great. And they've done like live action stuff. Like again, like Cowboy Bebop is supposed to like finish up soon. Like it got delayed obviously because of COVID. Then also the lead actor broke his leg, and considering he's doing all of the stunts, it's kind of important to not have a broken leg, right?
Yeah.
Like that can. But then and also like, and I see in this article because it was announced not too long ago also that they're making a live action One Piece. And if you don't know what One Piece is, it's literally
big hat.
Yeah, and it's an
anime with a big hat.
That's over 1,000 episodes long now. Yeah. And the creator, every time he's asked, I saw somebody talking about this, like every time he's asked about how far he thinks he is, like one time he was like, yeah, we're about 80% done. Then he was like, yeah, we're about 60% done. Then it was like 95% done. Then 70% done. Basically, this thing like might last. Like I might be dead and this show will be still like going on because like just nobody knows. So like they're really getting, they've thrown a lot of money at the anime world, making both live action stuff and just actual original, anime content.
Should be called a whole bunch of pieces.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Didn't deserve that. Here's my take on specifically the Pokemon series. I saw a live action Pokemon series, and I don't know why, but I did not immediately think of Detective Pikachu. Maybe because that was a movie, and I just sort of assume a lower production value, even though that's not how TV works anymore.
Especially with Netflix,
right?
Because they've just got the reason why Netflix literally will make just about any idea that's pitched to them into a TV show, because in a large part they have to spend money. Like they have so much money to spend that they have to spend it. And so the one thing you know with them is they make plenty of shows that turn out to not be good, but it's almost never an issue of lack of a budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's examples of them doing live action anime type shows and being bad. Death Note is one of the most popular franchises like in Japanese
everybody
anime
hated
culture,
that one, right?
and the live action movie is bad. It's like there's plenty of examples of it. So like it's not like they've never messed up before.
But the Detective Pikachu movie with the level of graphics that it had to have to do all of the Pokemon that way just isn't at an incredibly high level. Mm-hmm. But again, with that being said, have we all seen Detective Pikachu now?
Yes.
I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to, partially just because of the novelty of this is what Pokemon would look like in real life.
It looked so good. It didn't look like, it wasn't like, they looked real, right? Like it wasn't overly cartoony. It just looked,
outside of Mr. Mime's dodgeball shoulders, then
What a weird thing
Mr.
to have
Mime was
stuck in your
literally
craw.
the best thing about that movie.
Also, Mr. Mime has weird shoulders.
He has weird shoulders, but they literally look like they were textured to be dodgeballs.
What is it that makes that the first thing that you remember?
Because
how does that happen?
Oh
but like I want to know, but I want to understand your brain better. Like how? Because like I don't remember anything about Mr. Mime in this movie other than he did like one bit and he was kind of weird looking.
He was good. He had a BDSM kink. Don't shame Mr. Mime.
Wait a second, what?
BDSM kink.
No, I heard.
Don't shame Mr. Mime.
That is not the part that I wanted you to re-say. I wanted you to. Was that in the movie? Did I fall asleep for
that
one
was
part
in the
of the movie?
Mr. Mime's a weird guy. Don't shame him.
Rudy, are you sure you watched?
100% in the movie.
You watched this in theater?
He
on your laptop?
Shut up! He watched Detective Bleepachu. You change one letter.
You took a pee up?
No. Well, gross. I was just gonna. Actually, sorry. You know what? I screwed up my joke. I yelled at you and I screwed it up.
You're fine.
It's Bleep Detective Pikachu. Is the parody.
There you go.
Sorry, I had it all in my head. I was like, yeah, but it's just Richard Detective Pikachu.
Hey, you hit more than you miss. You're still batting.
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm the best. I'm fouling some things off.
I think you hit more than you miss.
Mr. Mime, the red stuff on him in Detective Pikachu beards is all textured that way, including his like hips and belly.
Okay.
It's just weird textures.
It is. It just reminded me and like half the internet of a dodgeball.
Half the internet? Half the internet?
You think half the internet?
You think 3.5 billion people think? I like that film, but I didn't love that his arms
I didn't
looked
say
like.
I didn't love it. It just reminded me of a dodgeball.
You and 3.5 billion people.
Yes.
Again, I'm not saying you are wrong. That looking at it now, and if I cropped it down, it could be a dodgeball.
There you go. That's all I was saying. You didn't have to make a 5-minute video.
No, that's not all you were saying.
That's not the point, though. The point is that was your word association. Like, your one holdup with the movie was that Mr. Mime's... the Pokemon looked great, except for Mr. Mime's dodgeball shoulders. And the fact that that's the thing you remembered is what was interesting to me. Not actually the shoulders themselves. I could take it or leave it. They look like dodgeballs, though.
They do. That was all.
But I really enjoyed that, I think, because of that idea of like, hey, alternate timeline Pokemon are in the human world. That's probably what it would look like, and that's how I would like for it to be, where everyone kind of has a pet companion Pokemon or whatever. So the idea of getting that in series form, I could very easily kick up my feet and enjoy that 30 or 40 minutes at a time, as long as it meets the level on a production level scale, which with Netflix you assume it will.
I was gonna say, The Witcher obviously came out, and they've got a bunch of like creature design stuff, and all of that looks good.
What's The Witcher?
I would throw my pen at you if there wasn't a pane of glass in between us. But
Did
like,
you
all
see
their
the
stuff looked
Olympian
good.
that was wearing a Witcher pendant thing?
I did not. No.
She's one of the gun shooting events.
Rifle.
No, it's
Rifling.
no, because rifle needs two hands. It's one hand, like it's called like sharpshooting, I think.
Whoa.
And her stance is very old timey.
Oh, okay.
Gun in front.
I saw the picture. I didn't notice the pendant.
Hand is in her pocket, but hanging on like her belt loop is a little Witcher pendant.
I did not see that.
Beards is Olympian.
I saw that picture earlier, but I didn't notice the pendant.
I don't think she's American, so you may have to
You
move.
notice the dodgeball shoulders.
Was there something else you were going to say about Pokemon before I interrupted you about you? So the Witcher thing has characters that meet your expectations, is your point?
They have a creature design that's very good and holds up well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's never. It's it's entirely possible that like the people they go with, right? Like their direction will just be a bad direction. Like that, it could absolutely happen. Though the way they decided to pick them and how they make them look just might be. It might not be the exact. It might not look the exact same as Detective Pikachu. It may be worse. But it will never be an issue of money. Like there's always the chance that this will be bad. Money will never be the issue. It's just simply whether or not the people who are put in charge, like how they see this show going, right? Do they want to do something kind of like the video game, right, and do the whole hey, you go to all the gyms, well, essentially following like the anime, right? Like go to all your gyms. Like is it going? I assume take place in one of the games that we all know, or is it going to be something completely different, right? Like Detective Pikachu was just a different story, and honestly, like in a different part of the Pokemon world than we've ever seen. Like it'll be interesting to see.
I think the only thing that could make me bail from it would be if the character design stinks.
For sure.
Because here's a little secret: the actual storyline of Detective Pikachu, like the character development, all that stuff,
genius.
It was best movie ever made.
Yeah.
It's all just kind of fine.
The Citizen Kane 2, they call it.
It's a kid's movie, right? Like not Citizen Kane. Detective Pikachu is like it's got kind of a kid storyline for the most part. If it's just going from one gym to another or whatever, man. If the Pokemon are good to look at, there's going to be parts of my evenings where I'm going to think, you know what, I could really use right now. You know what I would like would be a real pick me up. I'd like to watch some Pokemon that look fun, and I want to just cuddle a little Pikachu.
Just look real.
Now let's just make it R-rated.
I mean, my guess is they won't, but you never know. I feel pretty confident the Pokemon franchise will not
I doubt
Pokemon
it either.
company would lease it out and allow it to be R-rated. But hey, you never know, right? And like the thing too is like with Detective Pikachu, like one thing, like it was a kids movie, but like there were like with most kids, like SpongeBob, right? Like you have adult humor within there. I imagine that this show will have that same thing.
I mean, there's just a lot of reasons it could be rated R, Beards. I feel like it would be important to clarify kind of what direction you're hoping it goes in. Because you've already kind of gone over Bleep Detective Pikachu.
No. Let the audience use their imagination.
I don't want to explore Mr. Mime's darker side any more than Rudy already has.
Imagine how the rated R, however you think Beards will think it is. Use your wildest imaginations and then tweet them at us. At Beers and McFly on Twitter. What do you think?
I think that this is one of a very few instances where I wish that this segment was taped so I could curse and just make Beards bleep it out, because there are some pretty funny jokes that I don't get to make here. Some of them are even just like imagining the dialogue in an R-rated movie for Detective Pikachu. If Ryan Reynolds' Detective Pikachu was basically Deadpool, you know? Yeah. Have you guys watched I Think You Should Leave yet on Netflix?
No.
It's like a sketch comedy show. The first season is very good and very weird. Second season is out. There's a bit in it that I'm now imagining Pikachu doing, and it's also very, very funny. And you guys should watch. You guys should watch I Think You Should Leave. It's very weird. It's very good. I might see if I can show you guys one of the skits mid-commercial break or something. For everyone listening, I'm just sort of thinking about the Ghost Tour bit. And I think that if we had Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu kind of going through all those same motions, it would create a very good comedic moment.
I like Ryan Reynolds. I want Ryan Reynolds involved in this.
I feel
He'll probably end up being like an executive producer or whatever.
I just want him in it.
What do his shoulders remind you of? That's my big question.
Shoulders.
Mainly shoulders.
Just normal shoulders.
I'm a big Ryan Reynolds fan.
They're not dodgeball textured. That would be weird for
you
human
ever
to have
actually
weird dodgeball
have you
shoulders.
Seen him? It might be photoshopped. You don't know, Beards.
Yeah, have you met him? You've touched his shoulders in person,
seen
Beards?
him in
Wow,
real life?
Crazy. I didn't know that. You guys are close? You want to cuddle up with him and watch R-rated
You are,
Pikachu
I'm jealous.
Netflix show?
I'm a big Ryan Reynolds fan.
So is Beards by the sound of it. Bleep
Did you
Detective
see
Pikachu.
he's been doing a Deadpool YouTube movie review or movie trailer reviews like channel thing?
No. What?
Yeah, so like he'll like dress up as Deadpool and on Ryan Reynolds' YouTube channel, he did a trailer review of Ryan Reynolds' movie.
That's pretty funny.
What I forget, and it was with Korg, the rock dude from Thor. So yeah, it was pretty. It was he's been doing those now for some of his movies, and it's pretty entertaining.
It's really hard for me to find a funny in for this segment that's not just me doing a Pikachu voice and yelling a curse word.
Do it. Just do it.
No, I don't think I should.
There are plenty of words you can say on the radio. Just do it.
It's 9:50. I could probably say
At JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, at Not That Rudy, at Sports Radio 810. Just do it already. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
It's funny to everyone forever whenever you get given a PP up in a Pokemon game, right? That never stops being funny for anybody else. Because it's been funny. That's what I'm saying. You go into our ads, you get some little PP up.
We have ads for that.
Yeah.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Last segment of the show. Tomorrow we are on from 8 to 10, which will bring the long-awaited return of Seth Kaiser.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it has been a while.
It's been a really long time since he's been on the show because he and I are having personal issues. No, that's not true at all. We just haven't had a Tuesday show in a really long time. NBA Finals, I think, had games. NBA playoffs had games on Tuesdays for a while. I don't remember what it was last week, but we've just had some Tuesdays without shows. So we've had shows without Seth Kaiser. That changes tomorrow. We'll welcome him back into the Almost Entirely verse, I guess. He never left. He didn't have shows. But excited to talk to Seth tomorrow and as we're here looking at the training camp, it should be a lot of fun. I guess we're kind of in training camp now.
Yeah.
A few more big picture things that we probably won't have time to get to tonight. Maybe we'll touch on tomorrow. We have literally not mentioned we've not mentioned Aaron Rodgers over several shows. And I think even on Friday, maybe at some point we were seeing some stuff about how some sports books were taking Packers odds off the books because they thought he might be retiring in the coming days. Short version is things are working out, and we're going to do all this again next year, pretty much.
He realized he's not leaving Green Bay this year. They're not going to get rid of him. He wants to play football. They essentially come to an agreement that makes it look like he wins. Green Bay's conceding. I think they're voiding the last year of his contract, right? And it kind of allows both of them to save face. And he was never going to just not play football.
It basically seems like he is going to bully them into trading for Randall Cobb, which is not a joke and is a real thing. And you're right, voiding his last year of his deal, which means he's actually under contract for next season also.
Mm-hmm.
But what that does, because some of the early reporting was about how it was going to facilitate his exit after this season. There was some weird reporting on this today. But I think Schefter had an early tweet about how this was going to facilitate his exit from Green Bay, which sort of sounded like he was going to be gone after this season. And he probably will be, but what it actually means is that he is going to play this season out with the Packers, and the next offseason there's going to be a full sweepstakes for Aaron Rodgers. Yep. Everyone's going to know he's on the way out unless the Packers really publicly bleep him over again. And he might retire for real if they decide to hold out there. And then they have a chance to still get assets for him.
Mm-hmm.
This is I think this is more a win for the Packers than it is for Aaron Rodgers.
For sure. Yeah.
If it was even if this was going to be the last year of his contract, it would have been a win for Rodgers in my book because he plays out one more year and then he's a free agent. He can be Tom Brady picking his next destination.
Yeah.
But the one other thing is that wherever he gets traded, he's probably going to immediately sign a contract extension.
You would think.
So, if the Broncos want to give up some assets to have him for 1 year, they got two quarterbacks. They have two quarterbacks.
Two great quarterbacks. Why would they want to add anybody?
And you know what they say about having two quarterbacks?
You got two, you really got five.
Where you got two, you don't need Aaron Rodgers.
Of course not.
That makes it three. You don't need three. Two's the perfect number of quarterbacks to have.
Exactly.
That's why the Chiefs have both Shane Bouchelet and Anthony Gordon.
Washington State and SMU.
I picked up the roster. I didn't even need it. I said the names before my eyes even focused. It's training camp season, babies. All right, 8 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be back. We'll talk to Seth at 9. Until then, tweet us what you think Beards wants to be in the R-rated Pokemon movie. And I think it was just go click the links of our friends Matt Derrick and Craig Stout.
Yep. Click those links.
That should carry you over all the way until 8 p.m. tomorrow. So until then, bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.